Good afternoon on yet another Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. What has been a beautiful, crisp, and sort of weirdly weathered December. I mean, no weird hot days, but at the same time, we've gotten snow for 2 hours randomly, and then it just goes away the rest of the time. Kind of like some of the good performances we see from some NFL teams, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your favorite podcast that just learned this week that the worst head coach in terms of motivational speaking in the NFL isn't Jonathan Gannon. It happens to be somebody else. Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, guys. And we are here for yet another episode of fun, football, and chaos. And as you can tell by the title of the episode, there's some overreacting to talk about around this league that we're going to get to here in a couple moments. But, of course, this amazing, troublesome triumvirate. I'm never by myself. This show would be terrible if I ever had to do it by myself. I am joined by my compatriots of chaos. First, our games master, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Justin Zuckman, Zucktails. I haven't said anything else aside from Justin in a while. Zucker, Justin, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. And of course, at the top of the screen, the myth that is real. He's looking around, making sure. The Podfather himself. Rick, how we doing?
I'm just pinching myself to make sure that I am real right now because, that's a little interesting there for sure.
Plot you've been a figment of our imagination the whole time.
I've been a figment of my own imagination for 32 years, so, why not, right? I'm like all the emotions of Inside Out put together in one person, and then that person is inside someone else's head instead. That's kind of how it goes from here. But otherwise, I'm great. You're right. It's been a weird winter because it's not winter yet, whatever. So, but yeah, other than that, we're good.
Yes, as we technically wait for the winter solstice to pass for it to officially be winter. We know it's winter. Let's be real here. Fall finished. We didn't really get to enjoy sweater weather as much as we wanted to, but we will get to enjoy more NFL, ladies and gentlemen. 5 weeks, count them, 5 weeks remain of this 2023 NFL season. What's been quite the interesting, Jesus Christ, young Charles Leclerc right there with my wording. What has been a very interesting season, to say the very least, is slowly coming to an end. And still plenty left to be played for. So many divisions left on the table to be decided. Wild card races that are just so jumbled up right now. There's plenty that we're going to have to talk about. And that's kind of going to connect with what we're talking about today, as we can see in the title. Before we get to the fun in the games, as we always start with, just for the people to understand, when it comes to this, I feel this sport in particular, especially because it's just a 17-game season. It used to be 16 back in the good old days. Now it's 17. It's very easy to overreact to one game at a time. And for us to think, this team, this, that, and the third, and then 2 weeks later, that narrative has completely changed. But now that we are about 12 to 13 games or so, give or take, into just about every single team now, I think we're at a much better route where we are looking at some of the significant overreactions, we want to call them, and we're going to say, is there legitimacy to these overreactions, or are they just a bunch of horse hockey? It's going to be one or the other for a good amount of these, and that's going to be the fun part of this.
I also do say Isaac Newton will be very happy with the title of our show this week, because this is his third law of motion. For every reaction, there's an equal opposite reaction and an equal opposite overreaction.
Exactly. That's why I went for it. So as the science geek part of ourselves comes out in the episode title, let's get to it now, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start with the fun. And we were just talking about Isaac Newton. Well, Rick, blow the people's minds with the fact of the week.
Well, they've been in a lot of the attention span over the past couple of weeks. And so I'm going to highlight the Pittsburgh Steelers, but for a different reason with this mind-blowing fact. So when you think about sporting logos, you have the ones that make the most sense. If you look at the New York Yankees logo with the baseball and the American top hat, Yankee Doodle Dandy, George M. Cohan's song makes sense. In football, the Houston Texans logo with the steer head and the red and the blue for the Texas flag and the star, which is in the Texas flag as well. So what is the story behind the Pittsburgh Steelers logo? Because as you know, there is the Steelers name in the circle with 3 shapes of different colors. So what does all of that mean? So what are the shapes? What do they mean? So I did a little research on this, and it turns out that the Steelers logo is based on the steel mark logo belonging to the American Iron and Steel Institute. So this is not really groundbreaking because you can probably guess this basically, but let's dive a little bit deeper into it. The steel logo also contains 3 diamond shapes, which have a name, by the way. They're not just diamonds. They're called hypocycloids. HYPOCYCLOIDS. And what they mean, according to the U.S. Steel Corporation, which is who created the logo, is that steel lightens your work, brightens your leisure, and widens your world. Now, you may have noticed that I said the word leisure. I could have also said leisure, but leisure is more of like the proper way, I guess, to say that, because sports and leisure is one thing, but leisure for like work is a different acronym altogether in a sense. And the three materials that are used to produce steel are highlighted in each of the hypocycloids. So yellow is coal, orange is iron ore, and blue is steel scrap. So when you're thinking about, like I said, like the logos that you see, why are certain logos a certain way? There's actually a really rich and deep history for the Pittsburgh Steelers logo, which was really the case back in the 1950s, because that's when helmet logos really took off in the NFL. There's a lot of time before then when the logos were just the colors of each team, which you see now in the Cleveland Browns. Their logo is not on the helmet. Well, first of all, Brownie the Elf doesn't belong on that helmet, but that's neither here nor there. Another conversation for that today. But for a very long time, their colors were just the adornment of their helmet. If you play backyard football, you'll know that, because the Cleveland Browns were the only one that didn't have a logo on them. Even the melon heads or the pigskins had logos, but the Browns didn't. So that was kind of more the case. And actually, one last little bit here. 1962 was when it was suggested to the Pittsburgh Steelers, hey, use the steel logo, the steel mark logo. It was suggested to them by Republic Steel of Cleveland. So Cleveland, in a roundabout way, told Pittsburgh, put this logo on your helmet. And they did. So the rivalry may have grown from there, but it started off with a friendly suggestion, I suppose. So there you go.
Sometimes your greatest enemy can end up giving you your greatest strength.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, again, it's one of the more iconic logos, I think, in the NFL, just because of how, I would say probably top 5 of like the most, like, to a random person walking on the street, if you showed them a logo, they would know what it is. Steelers, Cowboys, Packers, Patriots, somewhere in that realm. They would know what those logos are. So I'll Bears too, because it's a bear. Even the C is Chicago. So yeah, I'd say that. But if you saw someone like the Jets logo, maybe they get it, but they might think it's like a different Jets team, because hockey buffs think Winnipeg. So how it goes. But
yeah. Oh, look at that. Yet another mind-blowing fact. Perfection right there, Podfather. That's what your mind-blowing facts are. There hasn't been a single one where we think to ourselves, I don't think there's been one of those.
Well, there was that one that you wanted context for way back in the ether. So,
well, I mean, to be fair, that's not more so thinking, that's more so like you were doing a two-parter without telling us you were doing a two-parter.
That's true.
It's like Fast and Furious making going up to 15 movies, we think, and then when we think it's finally over, we're going to get the 16th one.
How many more villains can they introduce into that series? And Aquaman's now a villain, I guess, and in Fast 10, he hasn't even gotten to a second movie yet, so
Well, Rick, here's the thing. The answer to that question is simple. How many more wrestling stars can they just randomly put into the Fast and Furious for whatever reason they want?
Has Batista made it yet?
No.
No.
In Fast and Furious, no.
Fast 11, that's all I'm saying.
That's a crossover. That's a lot better than the one I was thinking of, which was Fast and Furious 12 with Mike the Miz Mizanin.
God. Well, hold on. So let's go this. So 11 will have Randy. Or no, Batista. My bad. 13 can have Randy. 12 with Miz. 14, what are we thinking? LA Knight?
No, you know what I'm thinking for 14? I'm thinking let's pull out some of the older guns. Let's get a female villain in there.
Okay.
Let's get a Beth Phoenix.
Hey. Okay.
Yeah.
Will Edge be in there as well or no?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, he's the actor of the family already. Have you seen Vikings?
Yeah,
he's very, very good. So, yeah.
So 14, Edge and Beth Phoenix.
Yep.
15, Roman Reigns.
Yep.
Because he has to be on one of the bigger numbers.
Yep.
And then Roman comes back in the 16th one, and then LA Knight is in that one.
There you go.
So boom, I think we just planned out the rest of the Fast and Furious franchise as well.
This show gives you everything you need to know about entertainment and pop culture. Harry Potter, Fast and Furious, Pokemon at some point. We got you covered.
And a little bit of F1 has finally been added into the universe. The better motorsport. Thank you very much by some people. Anyways, moving on. Thank you as always, Rick. Now let's move on from a mind-blowing fact to some of the more brain-churning matters of this show. Now, we do not have a trivia this week. Justin is going to take a week or so to recuperate before he tries to stump us again next week. But we do have other games, of course. Trivia ain't the only thing that our games master has prepared in the past. And we got a double dosage this week of each of them. So, Justin, what are you hitting with us? What are you hitting us with first?
I'm going to hit you with the would you rather first. And the would you rather is, guys, who would you rather, or who is your current MVP? Is it Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy? Now, you can go with the wins here, and I know that people don't want to choose wins as a quarterback stat, but if you want to go purely with quarterback stats here, Dak has a quarterback rating of 108 currently. He's got 26 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, 3,234 yards, and a 70% completion percentage, while Brock Purdy is no slouch either. He's got 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions as well. Quarterback rating of 116 and a 70.2% completion percentage with 3,185 yards. Guys, who's your current MVP?
Well, the thing is, for me, I don't want to pick either.
I don't either.
We will respect the rules of Justin's game here, and we will pick just between these two.
Who are you picking then?
As of now, again, I'm still going. It should be Hill or CMC.
It's not going to be it. They'll be offensive players.
I think it's just an excuse.
My vote will be cast as long as they win the division for CJ Stroud. So who
also deserves some legitimate consideration if they can rise up.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. This is the lesser of two evils argument for me here, because there's not enough separation between them and the guys below them, I think. But at the same time, too, both of these guys are one bad game away from plummeting out of the race completely. I mean, and what's possible with Prescott, because all he has to do is throw 4 interceptions in one game, and there it goes from there. I think he has the tougher road to climb too, because I firmly believe this, that so long as the Cowboys don't win their division, he cannot win the MVP. Dallas has to win the NFC East, because the argument is very difficult for me to say, unless you have a season that blows every other metric out of the water, that the division winner or the division runner-up has the MVP. Like, I don't know how Adrian Peterson, the Vikings, did in the year he won, but again, that season he blew every metric out of the water. There was no other option, I think, to choose from there. In this case,
he was also the only reason they made the playoffs that year. Like, that team had Christian Ponder as QB.
Well, some people. Anywho's, I believe that as much as Brock Purdy did an absolute bang up job in that Philadelphia game, so did everybody else. But this is an award that is primarily an MVP award, which sucks for guys like CMC and guys like Debo, who could probably, if he had a really big year, could probably be a consideration, and Tyreek Hill. But I think that of the two, I think that Prescott is more likely to lose the MVP. So by that logic, I would say Brock Purdy is my MVP of the two choices that you've laid out. But again, I wouldn't pick him. There's still so much, and I would not pick either of these guys to be number one.
Right. And kind of to Rick's initial point that he was making for the setup, even with as good as their stats have read, it still doesn't feel like this is necessarily a premier year for a quarterback to win it. But like Rick said, because now that we're in the last month and change of the season, God, it used to be so good when we could just say month. But now since it's 5 weeks, not just 4, this is very much a case where if a quarterback just does enough, it's going to go to a quarterback. And right now, everything would indicate it should be one of these two. If I had to pick one between the two choices, I would actually, I can't believe I'm doing this, I would give it to Dak. Because the reason why I'm saying that is because I think, and I'm seeing this a lot on NFL Twitter, a lot of people are very nitpicky with Brock's stats, because if you look at the yards after catch of what Debo and CMC are doing for him, and they're turning 5 to 8 yard slants into 30, 40 yard gains into touchdowns as well. I think a lot of people are going to be way more nitpicky on Brock's stats as opposed to Dak. Now, I would also argue not every QB can hit those guys in stride the way Brock can. I think that's a legitimate thing. I think again, we've gone back and forth about this on the show before. I think Brock Purdy, yes, it's very much to say that on a lot of other teams, he wouldn't be getting this kind of support, but it's also to say that he also needs to be performing some of this stuff. Like hitting guys in stride is a legitimate thing. Not all 32 starting QBs can do that as well as each other. I think there's a specific group of these guys who are pretty good at it. And I would say Brock is pretty good at it from what we've seen over the last season and change. But I just think, and again, like some of this is me assuming what voters are thinking, which is what you have to do at the end of the day for some of these awards. Because let's be real here. How many times, and not just in the NFL, we could go to other sports. How many times do we think a guy should be getting their just dues, whether it's not even winning the award, but being one of the final 3 nominees? Because that's such a big deal now, being one of the last 3 nominees that they put on the graphic and stuff on IG and Twitter. And you see someone who should be a nominee that's not even on there. We've seen that so many times in so many sports over the last few years that it really just makes you think, do these voters deserve their awarding, voting capabilities? The answer to a lot of that is no, but unfortunately, it's the reality we live in. So to your point, Rick, while I do think a bad game would hurt Dak, here's why I also think a bad game would really hurt Brock. Here's why it would really hurt Brock, because, and again, this is solely me giving this to the logic of voters. I don't think a single one of these voters want to vote the last pick of a draft to be an MVP. It might be the stupidest thing you've ever heard, but how many takes about MVP voting and just sports voting in general have we heard over the last few years?
No, it's pretty fickle, but you're on point with that, because you see that a lot in baseball with the Hall of Fame voting, because guys will not get voted in based upon how they treated the media, which is not a requisite requirement that I thought of for being one of the best baseball players of your generation, which is why Albert Bell not being in is a crock to me. But
it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Good Guys.
Right.
Like we know that all it's about is on the field. But the problem is that the media loves to take all the off-field stuff into consideration way too much, and it hurts their feelings. And I promise you, I don't think a lot of these guys. Yes, I agree. World's smallest violin for a lot of these people, and I just don't think a lot of these guys want to vote Brock to be the guy, because I also think a lot of these guys don't want to give Kyle Shanahan the just due credit of, hey, this guy just turned the final pick in the draft to a legitimate MVP candidate. And look, I'm not here saying there's San Francisco 49ers bias against them. If anything, people would be biased towards them in most cases or not. This is a premier franchise in the San Francisco market, in the biggest sports league in North America. People should want San Francisco to succeed. But I think there's a lot of other off-the-field factors that would take away if Brock just has one bad game.
Well, you're also forgetting one other thing too with that too. Yeah. East Coast bias.
Yep, 100%.
I mean, how many times have we seen a Heisman Trophy candidate be from a West Coast team, and they don't get it because at 10 o'clock at night when their game starts, all the East Coast voters have watched so much college football that they don't care. It's kind of the same thing in a way, which was my only argument to that, was that back in the 90s when it was Steve Young, I'd say so. But what was the last Western division, aside from, again, I'm not calling Mahomes, because Mahomes is Missouri. West of Missouri, right. Who is the last MVP that you can remember?
Sean Alexander.
That was a long, long time ago, man.
Or LaDainian Tomlinson, whichever one was.
Regardless, perceptions have changed nowadays, though.
Yeah.
So. But I jumped on you, so go ahead. You want to finish?
No, you're good. My final point was, I'm not saying this to discredit Brock. This is not me making this argument because I think this. This is me, at this point, knowing way too much about how these stupid people vote for these awards. I think if between Brock and Dak, if one of them has a bad game in the last 5, I think people are going to hold it against Brock way more than they're going to hold it against Dak. So I think that would ultimately make the difference. And I think they'd be more willing to give Dak the award. So if I had to give it just based off the fact that we kind of understand how the sausage is made here at this point, as the quote goes, I think between Brock and Dak, if they play any sort of equivalent over the last 5 weeks, it would be Dak who wins it out over Brock.
Yeah. So let me say this, politics aside, I'll rephrase the question. Who is the best NFC quarterback right now?
I want to make a joke so badly, but I can't do it without laughing.
Me too. But yeah, actually, who's the best NFC quarterback? No, I mean, the jerk in me wants to say Tommy DeVito, but I can't even say that either.
No, we know your answer's Tanner McKee, dude. Come on.
Oh, I mean, he hasn't played yet. Tyson Bagent is the answer. No. Of the two, or just in general?
If you think there's a better one right now, but I don't see it. In the NFC?
Yeah, but I mean, it's between those two because Jalen Hurts hasn't been all that impressive,
Hurts has
and
been good, but he's been a little banged up the last few weeks, and
and
his
and
production's
and
gone down.
and look, Gino had a great season last year, but he hasn't matched it fully to this year. I said that as diplomatically as possible, Jared, not to anger you.
I
Because
agree.
I know I'm on very thin ice from last week.
Oh,
So
you are.
no,
You
that's
are.
fine.
You are. But you make a fair point there. I was going to counter it with also something that would get you be a stick in your craw as well. Jared Goff, who was very good in the season, he's kind of starting to tail off a little bit recently as well. So
turnovers have really come back to bite him. He was such an efficient quarterback for a long time. He set that record with he didn't set the record. But he got up in the top 5 of attempts without an interception, and all of a sudden he's throwing picks left and right now. It looks like.
I mean, here's the argument though. The argument is if you take Brock Purdy off the Niners and put in a random quarterback, do they still win their games because of how good their offense is?
I think so.
Is Prescott running the engine in Dallas to a degree where if you take him off and put Cooper Rush in, they fall off the map a little bit.
This is why I like the fact that Justin mentioned this to the top of his question of, wins aren't the best QB stat, because for the longest time people put that in and you just like there's so much.
Both 9-3.
No, but I'm not saying for this specific case. I'm just saying in general, like wins are no longer something that should be tabulated as one of the main QB stats we go for, unless we have a case where someone has 12 wins and someone has 9 wins. All right, 3 games deserves a little bit of discourse there to an extent. But that's why I say
on the wins too.
That's why I say to an extent.
Yep.
I think in regard to 2 guys who are on teams that are surging right now, you. Like with this question, especially, it could go either way. It's all about who do you want to give a certain edge to. And I would still say, even just barely politics aside, I think there's a chance Dak is going to get it right now. Because, and again, this is admittedly to Rick's earlier point, like we'd have to go back a little bit. Who was the last QB to not win their division to win the MVP award? There's probably a good search involving that. But if there is someone to break a trend, the way Dak's stats are kind of going right now, especially touchdown wise, and I saw this yesterday. Was it the last 5 games he's thrown like 16 touchdowns and only 1 interception or something like that? Like we're talking about being hyper efficient. He's being pretty dang efficient right now. And again, I just go to, this isn't even a politics thing. This would just be a discourse thing that a lot of people would have. I think people would be more, I don't even know if this is the proper word to say here, but they'd be more not forgiving. No. Basically, in terms of why these guys are succeeding, I think people are going to point to San Fran's weapons for Brock before they point to Dallas's weapons for Dak, is what I'm saying. Because Tony Pollard has kind of underperformed this season to an extent. Like, he's not performing the level we thought he would. We know CeeDee Lamb is great. 1 season too late for my personal prediction last year, but irregardless, CeeDee Lamb is performing great. And Dallas is still like, even with as flowing as that offense is, they don't have a true definitive number 2 that's strong. Like Brandon Cooks is good. Has he been the most consistent number 2 receiving option this season? I don't necessarily know. So if you got to give someone the credit here, Dak's offense, I can't believe I'm giving Dallas Cowboys QB credit here. But Dak's offense, where he has his one main guy and everyone else is kind of here nor there. They'll show up for a week or 2, but then be gone for a week or so. What he's doing is pretty dang impressive. Again, it hurts me to say because I don't like praising any QB doing well under Mike McCarthy, but it's just the facts of the matter. Dak Prescott's doing pretty good. So even the politics of it aside, I would give Dak the MVP award right now. You're muted, Rick.
Sorry, Birds. Do you want to get pretty semantical about this? I'll tell you who was the last quarterback to not win his division to win the MVP, and it is the most NFL thing ever. Because technically,
quarterback.
Yep.
Our second mind-blowing fact of the week.
Because technically speaking, in 2003, even though they were tied at 12-4, Peyton Manning's Colts won the division over Steve McNair's Titans, and yet they shared the MVP award. So I think that's extremely semantical as you can get. Like 2 guys in their division, same division, same record. One guy just had a better record than the other. He won the division, but hey, we'll give you both the MVP award. Pat on the back.
That was that the last co-MVP award that we've had since then?
I believe so. Yep.
Has to be.
Yep.
Yeah, and Adrian Peterson's Minnesota Vikings were second in the North the year that he won MVP.
Yeah.
Right. So there you go.
I think if you're an impressive enough second in your division, I think like if Dallas goes, let's say hypothetically, let's say they go 13-4, right? That's pretty good. And we've seen 13-4 be the number one seed in both these conferences since it's expanded to 17 games. It's just the team above them was a game or two better, but their quarterback didn't outplay Dak in terms of whatever metrics you want to say, aside from the wins. And again, to me, this is why I said between 12 and 13 wins and 9 wins, you can sort of bring wins into it if there's a way to look at it. You know what I mean? Like 4 wins and a way to break it down like that makes sense. But 13 to 14, my guy, we're right.
Well, again, Skylar Thompson's credited with the win for Week 18 last year, even though it was an 11-6 game. Just saying.
No, that's why I say I think it's very, it's very like arbitrary, and it can only be used in like a very, very specific circumstance if it matters. But in this case, it doesn't matter.
I'm with you.
It matters to someone in the audience, though. So, outstanding would you rather right there,
Justin. Spell win yet.
Outstanding one right there, Justin. Good on the would you rather. What else do we got this week?
All right, let's do a fact or fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, the 49ers are the best team in football right now. The most complete team in football right now.
I'm trying to think about, can you say anything other than fact on this end? I can say there's one team that until recently I thought was close, but then an injury kind of killed them recently. I say fact. I mean, I don't know how fully, ready they are defensively wise, but I know their offense is high powered enough. I would have said Miami would have been close, but then when Jalen Phillips went down with the injury, that kind of killed their completeness. But if we get a San Fran Miami Super Bowl, that's going to be potentially an arena football style scoreboard. There might be like 74-68 or something like that, based upon just how. Listen, don't tackle them, but just let them go. Why not? Just do that. But I will say fact: the Niners are on a mission. They have been tearing through every opponent they faced recently. It seems like there's really no stopping them. The only thing that can stop them, ultimately and unfortunately, is themselves or the injury monster. So I say fact. I say fact very, very easily.
And let's be honest, the only thing that has hurt them the last few years is just injuries at the wrong time. A lot of people kind of fluted, but when the Niners believed, hey, if Brock was healthy, they would have won the NFC title game. I think they kind of showed us that there's a little bit more fact in that than there is fiction.
Yeah.
And with this just dismantling of the Eagles, right? Like, because there's two parts to this question, and Justin kind of said it again in a different way. I think there's a difference between the best team right now at the peak of their powers and the most complete team. Because I think for San Fran, there's still very much a weakness in regards to that secondary. And I think a team with a very true elite wide receiver, like a Tyreek Hill, for example, could do some big damage to them. In that same instance, the defense needs to get, like Rick said, the defense is playing pretty good, but they still need to, this isn't the best San Francisco defense that we've seen even this season, which means they can get better and they could get back into form. But the perfect thing about it is while they're trying to do that, their offense has just been gangbusters over the last several weeks. It does not matter what defense it is. It doesn't matter who it is. We believe the Eagles to be one of the top 3, 4, 5 defenses in this league. Hey, shredded them so very much so. So I think when it comes to these questions, I think the 49ers are for sure the best team in the NFL right now. I think most complete. Then you need to start to break it down by position group. And are you a little bit concerned because Trent Williams has been a little bit shaky this season in terms of his full health and the O-line on consistent performances? Because in their losses, the O-line did get overwhelmed in key instances when it mattered the most. But I think if you're just talking about playing at their best right now, it's once again San Francisco. And it's funny, it's kind of been a run of form for them this season where the first month and change, they were the best. They hit their, rut, and they needed that rut to get back into form. And they've also beat good teams. This is the thing with San Francisco. And this is kind of why I hearken this back to when we were doing our division previews and stuff. When we talk about mid to lower tier teams, the whole, they have a tough schedule means a lot more than a team like a San Francisco where you can be at your best, but they'll beat you at their best or even 85% of their best. That's how good San Francisco is. You can throw their best shot at them, and they weren't even fully 100%, and they'll beat you by 10 points. That's how good the San Francisco team has always been. And it's only been injuries to rob them the last couple of seasons. If this team can keep this squad together, healthy for the postseason, they're going back to the Super Bowl. That's not a question whatsoever. And then it's just all about who in the AFC depending on who makes it, can beat them. And kind of to Rick's point, I know this is looking way ahead of this question, but I think there's only one or two AFC teams that could beat San Francisco. And if it's anyone else but the number one or two that we would think of, I think it's the Lombardi's going back to the Bay. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC is such a gauntlet right now because there are so many good teams that can make the playoffs, and you could probably potentially see, like you said, 4 or 5 teams, maybe 6 teams winning the AFC and getting to the Super Bowl. But of those 6, yeah, there's only a couple that can run with San Francisco as currently constituted. For record, just so we highlight the defense, so that no one from the Bay kind of throws us under the bus here. The 19 points they allowed against Philadelphia last week was the most they've allowed on defense since week 2. Yeah. I mean, there were a couple 17 games split in there here or there, I believe, but in wins, yeah. When they win, they win.
Yes.
And rip teams to shreds. I think so far this year, I think they have put up 112 points against the NFC East, and they haven't played the Commanders yet, which means that they've put 112 points against the 3 teams from the NFC East that went to the playoffs last year.
Now imagine what they're going to do to the team that didn't do that last year. It's going to be something. And for me, Rick, my last point to kind of piggyback off of what you reiterated there with the whole AFC thing, the two of us being hockey fanatics, we talked about this in the NHL last year with the Eastern and the Western Conference. We talked about the East had 6 teams in the NHL last season that you could have conceivably thought was going to make the Stanley Cup final. Mm-hmm. Ironically, a team we didn't think was in that 6 ended up making it. But irregardless, we thought, the East is so deep, this, that, and the third. It's a different conversation once you talk about who you're seeing on the other side. And I think Vegas was probably going to run over a lot of the teams we thought in the East last year that could have. Now let's transplant that here into the NFL. Realistically, the AFC is wide open. I think we can make an argument for all but 1 or 2 of the current 7 playoff teams right now that could do it. Heck, there's probably a wild card team that we would favor above one of these division winners for all we know. But in that same instance, it's a whole different conversation when you're talking about who the cream of the crop is. And we said this before the season, and even though it's kind of fluctuated, I still think we're able to say this. The AFC is the deeper 1 through 7, but the best belongs in the NFC. And the best is the San Francisco 49ers.
You're not going to get an argument from me on that end, too. I think that's fully on point. Fully on point. I mean, again, look, the Niners are just too good, man. They play at such a different level, at a higher level. And again, it's a shame that the injuries are what has really derailed them, because you could be talking about a San Fran dynasty over the past couple of years, rivaling the Kansas City dynasty. So.
And they were not even a full quarter. They were 6.5 minutes away from beating Mahomes in that Super Bowl. They were 6.5 minutes away from having won it. And you take away the Brock injury from last year, and they make it last year. And we're not even saying that they necessarily win the Super Bowl last season, but we're talking about this team being on the precipice of their 3rd Super Bowl victory, or 3rd Super Bowl appearance in 7 years. That's pretty special right there. That is the kind of longevity and consistency that you want. And this goes to show that even for all the things we've said about them, and we have been critical when it is fair on this show to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, this is the kind of thing that organizations strive for to get. This ability and this, potential to win it all, like this San Francisco team has done. This is what David Tepper is looking for, but the problem is no one want to work for him like that. So that being said, Justin, phenomenal job with your Fact or Fiction. Phenomenal job with it this week, brother. And very good questions as well. And I think the perfect thing, because Justin, because there's still a little bit of time, with the question about San Francisco, a lot of people are thinking, God, aren't you guys overreacting a little bit? Well, no, ladies and gentlemen. But we do have overreactions to react to. Justin, Rick, and I, in a very rare proper pre-show meeting where we actually planned this thing out. I know, very, very orderly for what a show that has chaos in the title, but every once in a while we need to kind of pull it together, guys. We have a list of overreactions, main 6 overreactions that we've kind of looked at takes and various things that people have said, whether it be social media, NFL Twitter, mainstream media, ideas of 6 specific teams that we're going to list here. If we have maybe 1 or 2, we can kind of Sam at the end, whether it's anything we want to debate, or maybe more so just hey, here's a point. But we have this main 6, the sinister 6, maybe you could call it. There's a little Spider-Man reference right there for the people, that we're going to go over right now. And we are going to say, is there truth to this? Or is it completely balderdash? So that being said, I know I said, boys, that I wasn't going to bring this up first, but because we've just finished talking about San Francisco and we made reference to the game, I think we might as well just start with this one because it's the most topical. So guys, overreaction or not, the Eagles are frauds. And we know how much we love to say people are frauds on this show. Now, I'll say this real quick. I'll just say my piece, and I will throw it to either one of you. I think we'll throw it to Justin on this one first. Justin, I don't think they're frauds necessarily, but I do think in terms of being a number 1 seed, I don't think they were the clear cut as many people would have thought, to say the very least, when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's my basic thing. They're not frauds, people. Let's calm down a little bit. And that means a lot considering I love calling people frauds on this show. So Justin, that being said, you, my man, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. Look, all year long, all we've said was there's 2 clear-cut favorites in the NFC, and it's the 49ers and it's the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the other thing we said all year was that as good as the Philadelphia Eagles have been, there's something off right now. They have yet to play their best football at, what are they, 13-2? Or 13, not 13-2. They haven't been that many games. But, yeah, there's something slightly off with the way that they've played so far. And I do think that they're going to continue to improve. They're 10-2, by the way. Their schedule doesn't necessarily get easier, but just because they lost to arguably what we are saying is the most a complete team in football doesn't mean that they're frauds or anything like that. I would have hoped that it would have been a closer game. Towards the end, the 49ers really piled on. Absolutely. But, I mean, let's face it. They're still top 2 team in the NFC and top 5 team in the league. I mean, if you're taking a team right now to win and you're betting on the Eagles, it's not like you're wasting your money. They're still a top team in this league. And Jalen Hurts is a little banged up. I expect him to maybe sit out a week or 2. Not this week, maybe. But I do expect him to miss a little bit of time, trying to get healthy again so they can try and make another run into the playoffs. The running game has kind of fizzled a little bit. I expect them to get back to basics. I expect the line to step up again. This team is going to be okay. This was a bad loss. This team is going to be okay.
I think the real answer to this question lies in how Sunday night's game against the Cowboys goes. Because if they can sweep Dallas, because they only beat them by 5 at home. If they can go into Jerry's World and beat Dallas in the AT&T Stadium and a 100,000 seat stadium, then they're fine. But if they don't, because if you look at their schedule, you look at most of their games have been closer than you would expect from the NFC champions and from a team that was a possession away from winning the Super Bowl last year. So I would say, for me, I would say they're frauds only because they haven't matched the expectations that have been anointed upon them going into this season. Now they're 10-2, so you can't really say that they're not winning the games, but are they winning it in style? Are they winning it in a way that you expect a team that had that swagger and that confidence last year to do that? They're not. So maybe last year was an aberration that they were just too overconfident. They were too good. And this year, it was like the Eagles that it's like the universe has balanced itself. The Giants last year were overachieving, and this year you've seen how they could have really been last year. The Eagles last year, maybe they were overachieving, and this is more the course correction of what they should have been. So, but we'll see what happens tomorrow on Sunday night. If they beat Dallas, it's all good. If they don't beat Dallas, and there's that chance that Detroit wins too, and you're looking at San Francisco, like 4 teams could be 10-3. It's not looking good for Philadelphia. Not looking good for Goodell's boy Nick Sirianni there, because it's tough to say. It really is. But again, they have good pieces. They have very good pieces on all sides. It's just it's been off this year, and maybe it's the course correction for other teams or for themselves that have been like, maybe they're not as good as they were last year. They're still a good team, but not as good because they're not outpacing anybody. And you saw the result this past week with San Francisco. Maybe they're not as good as the Niners. Maybe they got lucky because the Niners weren't fully settled last year and they had their injuries, So I think you can't definitively say they're frauds unless they lose against Dallas on Sunday night. Then you can probably say, yeah, it's a little fraudulent.
Just a little fraudulent. No, I think the thing for me with the wording of the statement is using the word fraud, which, I mean, I think our show needs to try to get copyright for at some point if we can. But more so is like it's a bit too strong of a word. Like kind of like you said, Rick, I think when you look at what this team was last year to this year, and yes, while the record is still on pace for what they were last season, as you said, the style of wins that they've gotten. There have been a lot of close games where the Eagles kind of toyed around with a lot of teams in these games, and it screwed them over in the Jets game where it just didn't feel like they took the Jets seriously until the fourth quarter. I know the sting of that more than most. And I think in regards to that with Philly, you can't do that against the best of the best. You can't not take this seriously. I think that has led to the downfall of certain teams where I don't even think this is necessary. I don't even want to fully say it's playing down to competition because there's another team we're going to get to here later on that has certainly been playing down to competition. But I think it's more so just, I don't know if it's a mental thing or a physical thing. They're just choosing not to play a complete 60-minute game. And I think you could still argue they haven't played a full 60-minute game yet this season. And be able to say that, and they're 10-2 is actually kind of phenomenal, to say the very least. But in that regard, there is something to be scared of if you're Philly, that you just got shellacked by a team that you wrote off. Like, let's be real here. The Eagles are the biggest, were the biggest verbal critics of the whole, San Francisco, sure, you could have given them a healthy quarterback, whatever, that game would have changed. I don't know about that anymore after what happened. So you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to, if you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk. I know those are cliches, but I think if you're Philly, the team that, as you mentioned, Rick, like this team has confidence, this team has belief. They've been empowered by the amazing general manager there. They've been empowered by a guy, Nick Sirianni, who, like, let's be real here. Like he was kind of like from the first press conference we ever saw of this dude to now, complete 180 in terms of how he's presented, personality, interactions with his players, the whole 9 yards. Like there is an air of belief in this team that they are the best. And you need to continue to prove while you're best, because as hard as it is, they didn't reach the top last year, because they didn't win the Super Bowl. But as hard as it is to become the best, you gotta, like, the hardest thing is to prove why you still are. And I think if you're Philly, they're getting everyone's best this season. I think a lot of teams are throwing their best shots. Philly is so naturally talented that you can't just rely on talent. I think that's
so. I agree with you 100%. I do. I just did the playoff machine, which I know you guys love. If the results go the way that I said they would for this week, if Dallas beats Philly and San Fran and Detroit win their games, the Niners are the 1 seed at 10-3. The Lions are the 2 seed at 10-3.
Let's go.
The Cowboys are the 3 seed at 10-3. The Eagles fall to the 5 seed. Poor NFC South.
Right. I was going to say the Eagles. Isn't it funny that the Eagles, whether they're the 1st seed or the 5th seed, they still basically get a first round bye?
That's what the Cowboys had last year too, because Tampa Bay was not very good last year, so it worked.
Let's be honest. Like, that's still a first round bye. All right. That's funny. Okay. Good. Perfection, boys. All right. So that was the first of the big ones we're going to say. I think all around the board, they're not frauds, but it's very, proper to question them at this rate. I think we can all agree on that. So not frauds yet. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about another team. We're just talking about we talked about San Francisco, best team, right? Talk about the Eagles, very good team, high expectations. Let's talk about a team here that definitively has had high expectations the last few years here, guys, but has not met that level of expectations. Rick, I'm not going to give my take on this. I'm going to throw this to you first. You're going to start off the discussion with this team, which we had some spirited talk about them a couple weeks ago already. So this is just revisiting that right here. They're coming off a bye. This is the overreaction, quote unquote. Rick, the current era of the Buffalo Bills window is basically all but shut, or even closed, if you want to say. What do you think of that?
I don't think it's an overreaction at all. I think that the Bills were a top 2 team for a very long time over the past couple of years, but now the reemergence of Baltimore, the rise of Miami, Kansas City still being Kansas City, like they're still winning that division, even though they're not as good as they once were. And the fact that there are so many teams that are now gunning for those wildcard spots, Indy, Houston, Cleveland, Pittsburgh to an extent, Denver, and Buffalo, even Vegas still has a shot, I think. Buffalo has not done enough, I think, to really go forward from there, to really make sure that they're consistent enough to be that top 2 team again, the top 3 team again. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they stayed put, whereas all these other teams kind of made moves to better themselves and elevate themselves. And also because the schedule is favoring certain teams here or there. I think the Colts being 7-5 is a product of, yes, Minshew magic, but also because they're a good young team that gets very underrated a considerable amount of time. I would take the Colts over the Bills right now as constituted, because to me, Buffalo has just not shown enough to really say they can win these big games. And if you look at their schedule, the last 5 games they have, at Kansas City, home for Dallas, at the Chargers on a short week on a Saturday night, home for the Patriots New Year's Eve, which is never an easy game, and then at the Dolphins to end the year. So that's 3 good teams, 3 probable playoff teams, 1 fringe playoff team, because the Chargers, you never know, and the Patriots, who, yes, having a down year, but they can still find a way to confound. I believe it's it. I think the Bills lost their opportunity, and maybe they sneak in, but for a team that you thought was going to be a Super Bowl contender to sneak in as the 6 or 7 seed in the wild card, which means they'd have to go to a Miami potentially, or a Kansas City in a first-round game, or a Jacksonville if they can get right. I don't know if I like those odds if I'm Buffalo here. So I don't think this is no reaction. I think this is on course. The plane is landing in the field properly for Sean McDermott, and it's time. Like they're done. Buffalo's done.
And before I fully throw it over to Justin, I know why you mentioned the Patriots there, because I did share with you too. Like I think it was earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken. Like CBS Sports laid out the actual mathematical possibility of the Patriots making it, and literally every single thing that has to break right for it to happen. But even that be damned, Rick. Even if you still assume the Pats missed the playoffs, the Pats still beat them. That's the biggest chagrin with this team. The Patriots, a clearly inferior team this season. One of their wins is against you. Like, that's not good.
And again, they were 1 yard away from losing to the Giants.
Exactly. And honestly, the penalty should have been called there. Like, we're talking about a Buffalo team that should be 5-7, because I think they're 6-6 now, right? Yeah. So we're talking about a team that should be 5-7. All right. What else? Justin, your thoughts about this Bills quote unquote overreaction? Are you on Rick's side that this current era of the Bills is done in terms of being a Super Bowl contender?
Depends what you mean by current era. Because if we're talking realistically here, to me, it's either got to be the Sean McDermott era or the Josh Allen era. Because if you are ending up firing McDermott at the end of the year, sure, that era is over. I don't think they're going to win this year. I think that they were just a little bit off this year. Like I said last year, there's just something about that team that's not a championship team yet. And there's a little bit more off this year. That being said, even if you bring in a new coach and a new GM, I don't expect humongous changes, but I still expect them to be a contender. I mean, if things break right for them, it's not impossible for them to win. It is a hump that I don't see them getting over sometime soon, or at least like in immediate recent history or immediate future. But if you're telling me in 2 years this team's going to win a Super Bowl, I'm not like shocked. You know what I mean? Like Josh Allen is a top 5 quarterback in this league. No matter what you guys tell me. I know that turnovers have been issues and he's forced the ball. Josh Allen has the ability to win any game. Any game that he plays in Buffalo, they have the opportunity to win. Especially when you have a guy like Stephon Diggs there. If you're going to tell me they're going to trade Stephon Diggs, they're going to go out and they're going to change the the makeup of this team, maybe they'll be worse, but maybe they'll be better. Maybe they fix that issue. I'm not ready to give up on a team with an elite quarterback and a solid defense like that just yet. Again, I don't think that they have the tools to win a championship today. I'm not betting on them to win a championship today. But this team does have what it takes to beat any team. I mean, we just saw them take the top team in the NFC into overtime in that Philly game. You know what I mean? They're going to play the Chiefs this week. If they beat the Chiefs, would anyone really be all that surprised? The Chiefs just lost to the Packers. And again, it's not to say take anything away from that Packers victory. It was a great win for them. But the Bills do have what it takes to win on any given Sunday. They are a complete enough team where, hey, that defense, even if they're banged up, that defense might shut you down. That offense might explode. You know, there's plenty of pieces that are still there. And if you're a new GM or a new head coach, that's one of the most attractive jobs in the NFL right now. You have a built-in quarterback. You have a solid defensive core. You have weapons. Again, are there changes that need to be made? Probably. But I'm not closing a door on them winning anything.
Right. And kind of similar to what I said with the Eagles thing, I think maybe it's just a word choice for me, where I don't necessarily think saying that this era of the Bills is done, but I'm kind of with you. I think there's two different ways to look at it.
It depends. If they miss the playoffs this year, if they have a losing record at the end of this year, and you tell me Sean McDermott's out, that's the end of that era.
Yeah.
Then yeah, you're right. If
But
you're talking to me, the core of the team,
yeah,
and their Super Bowl window as players, absolutely not.
Okay, but here, so let me spin it like this then.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe, both of you, that this Buffalo Bills team, as constituted, has all the pieces for them to win the franchise's first Super Bowl?
As of now, no.
I think that they have the pieces that they will need to build upon to win a Super Bowl. But I don't necessarily think that they are a complete Super Bowl team right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, Justin. That's kind of why, like, there's two different ways to look at Rick's question, where
exactly
Rick's specific question is right now with this, can they win it? Not
are they going to win this year?
Are they going to
no.
move up? Yeah,
no,
like
I would say no.
And that's
right.
why
If you're telling me, are they going to win with the core of Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, James Cook on offense, and a package of their defensive players that are going to be like their core defensive players, and then they move 30 guys and change them around and whatnot, and they win a championship that way? I have no problem believing that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm saying that, like, to me, the way that I want to label this team is this iteration, because I think with the way things are going right now, and again, this is slightly projecting. We still have 5 weeks here, but I don't really see, like, first off, I think Brendan Bean's job is safe. Like, I don't think he's going to be the one getting fired. I think it would be Sean McDermott between all these guys. I think Bean stays, Allen stays, McDermott would be Gonzo Alonso. And I think you talk about the issues with Stephon Diggs this year. I think no matter what the result is this year, anything less than a Super Bowl in actuality, Stephon Diggs is probably not going to be a Buffalo Bill for the 2024 NFL season. So you're talking about losing the top skill position player, and you're talking about getting rid of the head coach. Now, like you said, a very tantalizing job. A lot of guys are going to be putting their names in this hat. And Brendan Bean, I mean, let's be real here. He hit on Sean McDermott with his first head coaching shot. He's probably going to get a pretty good coach in there the second time around as well. He does deserve that belief that, hey, he got it right once with a guy who could get them double-digit wins, couple division crowns. Can he pick the guy that maybe could take him to the next level? If you just assume by law of getting better at his job, yes, he can. We're talking about still keeping Josh Allen. So, like, to your point, Justin, that's why I think, like, there's a difference between looking at this via the Sean McDermott lens or the Josh Allen lens. Mm-hmm. To me, I don't think the era as a whole is over, because I don't like, look, all due respect, Sean McDermott, he's not a coach that I would constitute as a era defining guy for a franchise. He helped get this franchise back up to a level that they weren't at in a while. They might just be time for the next guy to take it better, and they're going to do that with the current quarterback that's there. So, which is why I'm saying I think that more this iteration, because Diggs gone, we assume, McDermott gone, most likely, depending on things, but again, most likely gone. And then to your point about the defense, Justin, the defense is extremely talented, but even we were talking about the end of last season where there were, rumblings on the strongest part of that defense, the secondary, changes. And the fact that Tre'Davious White had yet another season-ending injury this year, and that both safeties only got another year older, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to see some more changes. But like you said, with the building blocks there, if they hit on their deals, and again, Brandon Beane's a guy he's been pretty good at some trades in his time as the Bills GM. I mean, dude got Stephon Diggs. Dude traded for Josh Allen, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this is the guy who's done the right things before. He can very much do it again. So I'm kind of leaning towards Justin for the future. But if we're talking about the now, yes, this specific team cannot win the Super Bowl.
Well, let me then put a hole in that future discussion. What do I always say about the Buffalo Bills? Above everything else, how mercurial the Pagula's ownership group is. And look, Brandon Beane's done a great job. But if Brandon Beane wants to bring a guy in who he knows can be a difference maker, and the Pagulas say too much money, and they decide not to bring him in, they let him walk, that could be an issue too, because this team has not had considerable success, and I mean getting to the Super Bowl consistently, since the Ralph Wilson days. The Pagulas have been hit or miss. So they might be an ownership group that says, well, you know what, Josh Allen, you haven't gotten us to a Super Bowl. You've gotten us close, but not there. So we're not going to give you the long-term contract that you're looking for. Stephon Diggs, you've been more trouble than you're worth, so we're going to let you go. And they're the wrong moves, but an ownership group like that, that's so mercurial in their decision-making, that's so aloof in a way in their decision-making, can also ruin the franchise. Hi, David Tepper. How you doing? I'm just saying, like, there's other factors in play here that make me say this current era for the Bills, it's done. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's done.
I mean, I will say, like, the thing I would counter that with is that they've already paid Josh Allen, so that's why you can't really say that with Josh. But I would also think, and again, we talk about how mercurial owners they are. Fair is not the word, so I'm not even going to say to be fair. But they've kind of let Beane do his thing. And here's the thing. Because McDermott, like, it's not like his contract. I don't think 2024 is the last year. I'm pretty sure they extended him to either 2025 or 2026, if I'm not mistaken. So there's at least, at minimum, I'll just say, let's say 2 years left on his contract. They have to buy him out if they're going to fire him anyway. I think if you can sell them on letting you fire him and buy him out, then you have to be able to make the pendants of you need to get the next guy in there as well. Like, I think for all we want to say, and look, I'm with you, Rick. Yes, the Pagulas are very mercurial owners, this, that, and the third. I won't disagree with you at all. And considering my thoughts on David Tepper in the previous episode, not a big fan of these billionaires who think they know everything when in reality they don't. But in that same instance, I think they will sign off on Brandon Beane if he knows how to sell it to them. I think he's been able to sell a lot to them so far with his football knowledge. I think he could do that at least one or two more times in this regard. So that'd be my thing. So that being said, fantastic boys. Justin, I'm going to throw this one to you first. And I'm trying to go a little bit of a pattern here. So we're going to stay in the AFC East, actually, with this next potential overreaction that we've kind of been seeing. This is interesting because this is a guy who, like, if we're just looking at raw numbers and even a couple of the advanced numbers, like, this is a guy who's a pretty dang good quarterback, all things considered. Tua, everyone's favorite Hawaiian-born NFL QB until his brother gets to the league. No, I'm just joking. Tua's going to be the better one. But in all actuality, Tua on pace. He is third in the NFL right now in terms of passing yards, second in touchdowns. He's easily going to surpass his numbers from last year, in part because he's actually going to be on track to play basically the entire season, unless they decide to sit him for a game at the end, depending on, like, seeding, as Rick was talking about earlier. But this is a guy who's going to be setting career highs for himself. He's 25 years old. He's going to be 26, going to turn 26 within the offseason. This is a guy who's going to be entering his fifth-year option. This guy going to be due a potential franchise QB caliber contract. But some people say, Justin, and this is the overreaction we're going to be reacting to here, some people say that Tua, for as good as he's seen, he's closer to being a really good system quarterback, like a Brock Purdy, than being an actual franchise quarterback for the Dolphins. So your thoughts on that take that some people have about Tua?
Look, I believe in the systems that McDaniels and Shanahan run. Those guys know quarterbacks. They know how to make their quarterback look good. I'm not going to hold that against the quarterback. Look, I think Tua could have thrived in other systems, but I mean, let's not sit here and discredit the fact that this team went out and they drafted Jalen Waddle and traded for Tyreek Hill and they fixed the offensive line and they did a lot to help this kid out. Now he still has a lot to clean up, in my mind. He's got 10 interceptions and 10 fumbles this year, of which he lost 4. That's a lot, and that's something that's stalled drives for them when they could have used or, in fact, needed scores. But I'm not saying that Tua is only good because of the McDaniels offense. I just don't think that's true. There's a reason that people were tanking for Tua 2 years before this kid was supposed to come out. The only issue coming out of college was, can he stay healthy? And it has been an issue in his NFL career. But when he's on the field, he's played pretty well. So, I look for him to clean up his turnovers over the next couple of years. And, hopefully he can expand on what's already been an excellent offensive career for him. But no, I wouldn't say that he's a system guy.
Right. And before I throw it to you, Rick, I'll say this as someone who is very high on Tua going into his eventual start in the NFL. And Rick can attest to this because when Tua was coming out, that's when the three of us were together in our same workspace, actually, his last year in college going into him being a pro. So this is a guy who we specifically three, even before we started this podcast, have been talking about for a long time. And that's why I always find it interesting when we talk about the Dolphins and Tua in particular, because this is something that the three of us have been following basically since the start. I'm a massive Tua fan. I love Tua coming out. I believe he could have won the Heisman his last fully healthy season. Not the one where he hurt his hip. I'm talking about the year before that when they made it to the national championship game. But that one SEC title game cost him the Heisman. All due respect to Kyler Murray, I think Tua still should have been the Heisman that year. I've always believed in Tua, and I'm with you, Justin. I don't think he is a system quarterback. I think you could plug him in a lot of different teams. I think there'd still be a lot of success. I also think it's fair, and this is why with this overreaction, I'm going to say it's not valid in terms of him being closer to a system QB, but I'm with you in terms of there's still a bit to improve to the point where he's not a franchise quarterback yet, but I think we're right there on seeing him being able to do so. I think we are extremely, extremely close to calling him one of the premier franchise QBs in this league. I think they're kind of like what we've been talking about, funny enough, with the championship teams, like the Eagles. There's that one thing they're kind of missing this season in terms of playing a full game. With the Bills, we thought that there was a thing or two missing with them going into the season. I think with Tua, there's just that final thing in his game that he needs to get over, and he will be easily, not even just top 10, we're talking top 7, top 6, top 5 quarterback conversations in this league. I think he's right there. So I'm with you. To me, he's closer to franchise than really good system. And I want to say really good system because system QBs we've seen them, right? We know what a system QB looks like. To be a really good system QB, I can't believe I'm complimenting this guy, but Alex Smith, I think, was a really good system QB in his time in Kansas City. Very low interception numbers, pretty good touchdown numbers, not going to be 30 touchdowns to 6 or 7 interceptions, but 5 interceptions, 21, 22 touchdowns, maybe a little bit more. I don't remember all his stats off the top of my head, but Alex Smith was a really good system QB, but we know he was never going to be a franchise quarterback. I think Tua is above Alex Smith, but it's definitely fair to say he's not franchise yet, but he's right there. Now, Rick, why are you going to disagree with us?
Okay, so the argument here, just so I understand this, is that Tua Tagovailoa is not a system-based quarterback, right? That's the argument?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in year one of Tua's NFL career, he was a young rookie that was thrown to the wolves of Chan Gailey. So, I mean, I understand that argument that system's not really something that you're talking about putting the old grizzled cop in with the rookie off the force. It doesn't really work out that well for that matter. The next year with Brian Flores still as the head coach, they had the co-offensive coordinators. They had Charlie Fry as the QB coach. You ain't winning with Charlie Fry, let's be honest here. So the question is, does this offense with Frank Smith and Mike McDaniel make Tua a better quarterback? I think that I still have a lot of reservations about Tua Tagovailoa because of the fact of injury concerns and because of the fact that, he plays a certain style that has translated well for certain quarterbacks in the NFL, but the hit rate for quarterbacks that are like him, that are dual threat, is marginal at best. He has shown in his last 2 years, though, that he has been a much better quarterback. I think last year he had the same amount of passing yards or a similar number than he had in the previous 2 seasons combined. So I could say that McDaniel's offense is probably a better scheme to him. Now, if I were to take Tua off of the Dolphins and put him onto another team, let's start this off. Let's flip Tua and Trevor Lawrence for a second. You put Tua on the Jaguars with the off weapons that are there. I expect him to kind of have a similar season to what he has right now because I believe he has the ability to find good enough pieces and make the right decisions. The thing that I'm not 100% certain of is his offensive line in Jacksonville going to hold up to what he's currently working with in Miami. So that's kind of where I have to kind of draw a concession there. I believe that he is a phenomenal quarterback. I believe that he is top 8. I know I ranked him low, but I believe that he has earned my respect to be a higher quarterback than what I ranked him as. My question really is, I want to see where they go this season, and then I want to see next year. Because 2 years is nice and all, but let's see what year 3 brings with now that the target's really on their back in a sense. Because again, remember, last year he didn't play the playoff game. He was hurt. And a lot of our concerns was, will he be hurt again? Can he make it through this full season? If he makes it through the full season, then we'll have a conversation. But I think it's too early to tell because there's still so many extemporaneous factors that can mitigate his performance and his success. And again, I hate to say it, he's one bad hit away from Miami going to Mike White to try and lead into an AFC East crown. And nobody wants that, especially the guy on the bottom of the screen. Nobody wants Mike White leading the Dolphins to the AFC East crown.
Right. Yep. Fair points right there. Fair points right there. So going to be something to see, but I think we can all agree and I think what the reason why some people are bringing that up is because this always gets brought up with these QBs when it comes time to talk contracts, because this is a guy that the Dolphins are going to have to make a decision on for a long-term deal. I think we can all, for the most part, foresee the Dolphins are going to be paying Tua. And when that contract is signed, there's going to be a lot of discourse on social media and on mainstream, which I'm sure will totally be healthy in every way, shape, or form.
I will also say, too, just looking at their final 3 games, Tua needs a lot of prayers in his final 3 games to make it to the postseason, I think.
Well, they need to win the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
For sure. If we're talking postseason.
No, I'm saying more like health-wise. Because I believe they'll make the postseason, but the last 3 games are Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo.
They're pretty good defenses.
Pretty good defenses all around. And
that's a Ravens team, by the way, that wants a revenge game because they're seething from last year.
And you know what, too? If the Jets are still somewhat alive, that defense is still pretty good from New York. So
let's just say this. If Miami wins the next 2 games, they'll clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah.
If Buffalo loses the next 2 games, they clinch the division.
Mm-hmm.
If those 2 things happen. So week 18, we might not even see Tua.
Yeah.
Which is another point I'd like to make, the fact that he's 3rd in passing. And how many quarters has he sat out at this point because they were leading by so much?
A couple.
And he could have easily been leading in passing at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, Justin, to what you said, I think that's the number one scenario. I think that's what the Dolphins are kind of aiming for. They want to be able to sit Tua out the last week of the season.
Absolutely. Now, the question is how's the seeding going to match up? Now, Baltimore obviously has to. They did have a tough schedule. They play the 49ers. They play the Jacksonville Jaguars. They do play each other in week 17.
Right.
So that might be a game for the number 1 seed there, which I would expect to be flexed to a night game.
It should be, I think.
Second flex of the season?
Or wait. It gets flexed, and all of a sudden at 7 o'clock, they're like, well, the quarterback's going to be Mike White and Tyler Huntley instead of Tua and Lamar Jackson.
Well, yeah, look, things might be settled at that point. You never know.
That's true.
Well, like I said, we'll see. Kansas City has a tough schedule coming up. We don't know when Trevor Lawrence is going to be back. He's questionable this week. He might play, which would be surprising to me. But look, this could be settled by week 16.
Yep.
And we might not see week 17 and week 8. Maybe we'll see him in the first half, the first couple games, but then I don't expect them to let him take very many hits.
Right.
So the worst case scenario for the NFL is that everything's settled by week 18. Who do you put tonight?
I'm just talking AFC in terms of the number 1 seed. I mean, Miami is in the number 1 seed right now.
Yes,
tiebreaker over everyone. They're 9-3. They're killing it right now. They're going to have 2, which should be very winnable games for them. They could easily be 11-3 going into
the Dallas game on Christmas
the
Eve.
Dallas game. And they might say, hey, look, this game doesn't mean anything to us.
Right.
What does beating Dallas do for them?
It's a non-conference game, which how many tiers in the tiebreakers do you get until you get to the non-conference?
It's
records?
a non-conference game against. They control their own destiny.
But McDaniel's a nerd. He might like that. He might want that. Tua starts a half.
They want the number one seed.
Yeah.
Whatever you tell me, they want the number one seed. They want home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They want the bye. They want the number one seed. It is the best thing for that team.
Mm-hmm.
That Bills game, it's probably going to be a 1:00 game. I don't expect it to mean much for either team. I mean, Buffalo might be out. Miami might be clinched as a team with a bye.
Yeah. Or even it could end up being a case where Buffalo, they themselves are competing for their wild card lives, and the Dolphins have the first seed. It's like, yeah, all right, Mike White, sure, whatever. Backups going. That could very much be a case. Or maybe not Tua, but you might see some of the starters in the first half, and then once the Dolphins see what it is, it's like, all right.
And then you put the backups in, and Devon Achane runs for 350 yards.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing. The best offensive skill position, like the Bills starters versus the Dolphins backup, the second best offensive skill position player you could say is the Dolphins running back, which is just the funniest thing of them all.
Absolutely.
All right, let's continue, boys. So we've gone from elite teams to some quarterback talk. Let's go to another QB here. So we were just on AFC for back-to-back. Let's go back to the NFC here, guys. Rick, I'll throw this one to you first because I think it's just funnier if you are actually the first one to answer this one. No, it's not the one you think I'm going to ask you. Jordan Love, Rick. Is Jordan Love the Packers' next guy? From 30 years of QB play with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, is it going to be 45 years of quarterback play with Jordan Love now, Rick? And more importantly, you can maybe answer this at the end. In the year, we're in 2023, right?
Yep.
To carry the two. Will Jordan Love also be the Jets starting quarterback in the year 2037?
No, but I will say the Packers will draft a quarterback in the first round in 5 or 6 years down the line just to really mess with all of us.
Fair enough.
So initially I would have said no because I didn't believe that Jordan Love had, the moxie to kind of be at his best. I mean, look, the Rams game that they won 20-3, he wasn't really a factor. He threw a touchdown, but it was really more Packers defense. And then the loss to the Steelers, which now looks a lot worse. The loss to the Steelers where he threw 2 picks, that hurt them too. But in his last 3 games, he has thrown for almost 900 yards. He has been error-free, 8 touchdowns. He's run the ball relatively well. The game against Detroit, he ran the ball pretty decently. It seems like he's getting it. It seems like he's kind of getting the system a little bit more, which, is harrowing for the rest of the NFC because Brett Favre got the system when he was young, and they went to a Super Bowl and they won it. They went to 2, actually. Aaron Rodgers got the system at some point, and they went to a Super Bowl and they won it. So the pattern is telling you that Jordan Love now is getting the system, and that is bad news for the NFC North and the rest of the NFC because the Packers, we thought they were done, dead in the water, and maybe they are, maybe because, they don't have that, easy of a time going forward. I mean, 6-6 is still a long way to go. Their schedule's favorable somewhat, but the NFC could be anybody on any given day. And, I think Jordan Love has shown enough to really warrant us turning off the burner on the Green Bay should draft a quarterback in the first round this year. Now, draft a quarterback in general? Yes, because, you don't have a good backup aside from Jordan after Jordan Love. So get a good backup in the system or get a backup quarterback somewhere. Get somebody. But it's Jordan Love's job to lose. Credit to him because he, I think, came in with the most pressure of any quarterback not named Zach Wilson going into the season. And he has shown that he can be a very good quarterback in this league. Maybe not a great quarterback just yet, but a very good, reliable, consistent quarterback. And with the Packers' youth on offense and on defense too, I think they're in a really good spot. So I don't think this is an overreaction at all. I think we're right on the money with this. And again, I will concede it. Hats off to Jordan Love. I think he's played overwhelmingly better than I anticipated him playing, which ousted for Tua. So I mean, what do I know about quarterbacks apparently? But neither here nor there. So, but that's my I think yes, I think he's earned his way to be the Packers starting QB for however long he wants the job until the inevitable fourth Manning child gets drafted and then in the 2029 NFL draft by the Packers.
Arch Manning to the Packers, maybe. Justin, what do you think about the take Jordan Love being the Packers QB for this foreseeable future?
Certainly for the foreseeable future. I expect him to sign a long-term contract, not too long. I would say probably he's going to get like a Danny Dimes 3 or 4 year deal. He's got the tools to build upon. He's got that like solid base where if he can build upon, what he's done well and get rid of some of the mistakes that he's made early on, he can really, as the fire department sounds an air raid, he can really take over for this team and push them into a playoff team consistently. Now,
You need to evacuate, Justin.
This team is an elite defense in my mind. They have played excellent. They could probably do a little bit better rushing defense-wise, but they have been an excellent team defensively, and that's really cleaned up a lot of the shortcomings that he's had so far this year. But look, he's played as well as any of us thought he would, and they can continue to improve, and he can even be a playoff quarterback this year if he continues to play the way he has. So hopefully, this stops and I am not going to die or something. But
this is your NFL red zone moment here, Justin.
Listen, at least it's not 2 a.m. All right,
that's true.
That's all I have to say.
That's accurate.
This happens at 2 a.m. sometimes.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Okay, good. It stopped. Okay, good. Here's my thing too. Just on the Packers as a side note, it's good that Jordan Love has kind of shown that he's been a really good player for them because their running game has gone missing this season. I think if you look at the stats based on rushing touchdowns, it's Jordan Love and Aaron Jones with 2 each.
Yeah.
And we thought for a while that their rushing attack of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon would be a lot better than they have been this year. And again, one thing leads to another, and Jones has only played 7 games. Dillon's played 12. They haven't really have a lot of options there. I understand that. But the thing about it is that if the Packers were going to be a problem, that would have been because Jordan Love wasn't going to be the answer quarterback and the rushing attack would have floundered. Well, half that's true. The rushing attack has floundered, but Jordan Love has made it a mission to, maybe not get the guys to where he wants them to be because, again, Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs are at 500 plus receiving yards. I'm sure you want a little bit more from like your top guys. And Christian Watson's been hit or miss this season, but the fact of the matter is that he's finding the right guys and he's finding the ability to get these guys open and get them the ball and have them make plays. So he's doing everything we could ask for and more. Now, if LaFleur gets fired at the end of the season, which I still think is very possible, we'll see what happens in 2024.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think at this rate, and if LaFleur's record continues to be true, because apparently he's undefeated in December from the stat I've seen before.
And what we said last week too, which caused Justin to lose 3 points last week.
To say the very least, I think this is a slight overreaction, but not the biggest overreaction. Only reason is because, and kind of similar to a point you mentioned before with the Eagles, Rick, I want to see the next few games how it really plays out. Because aside from the Chiefs, it's kind of been easier defenses the last few weeks that Jordan Love has had to deal with. Now, again, the Chiefs' defense is legit this season, and he did a very good job against them through 0 interceptions. I give Jordan Love full credit for that. He played a mistake-free game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But the game against the Chargers, like, that's not a good defense anymore. That has ceased being a good defense since, like, I think the 5th or 6th game of this season in LA. So it's not really all that. And I think aside from that, like you mentioned, he played poorly against the Steelers. Like, he's played poorly against good defenses this season. Like, I think that Chiefs game was the first definitive one where he faced a pretty good defense and he played well. So I think there's still very much a thing where we need to see a little bit more because, again, you mentioned the going away of the running game, Rick. This is, again, where I think, yes, Aaron Jones' injuries unluckiness is at the play part. Because remember, first game of the season on that long touchdown against the Bears, he kind of like tweaked his hamstring or whatever. Very unfortunate. But I think even aside from the Aaron Jones injury, Matt LaFleur has shown consistently in his time as the head coach of the Packers, he is not good at getting the rushing attack going on a game-by-game basis, even a possession-by-possession basis, if you really start to break it down. It's not the most consistent thing in the world. You'll have a half where the running backs were the key to the offense, and they only get like 6 touches in the third quarter, or third to fourth quarter. So I think the inconsistency of LaFleur and with that running game, I still think that might come back to bite them in a game or two here at some point. This week, I don't know, because they're facing the Giants, which Jordan Love, Tommy DeVito, hey, Paisan, that's so on the spicy Monday Night Football game because it's co-Monday Night Football this week. But in that same regard, I will give Jordan Love credit. He's not the bad, terrible QB that a lot of people thought he would have been, even to an extent, myself included, although I didn't think he'd be terrible. I just didn't think he'd be the Packers' next guy, which I still think we can, like, that's still a possibility. He had, because they did the reworked 1-year deal for him in 2024. I think when it comes to that, I think this is very much a wait and see game. I think it'd be irresponsible for the organization to just, cannonball it and give him an extension at this moment or at this season's end. Maybe later in the offseason, you want to give him a 1-2 year brief extension to show it. I don't think this is a guy that I'm committing 3-4 more years to right now, because while there's been some good, there's still been plenty of bad this season, right? Like before the last 3 games, which I think, again, last 3 games, phenomenal. I think, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, I think is the stat line, give or take.
8, I believe it is, yeah.
8 touchdowns. So before the last 3 games, he was at 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And in an alternate reality, he could have gone 2 touchdowns and 5 interceptions the last 3 games. We need to see that consistency. If he can show in the last 5 games here, continuing, he's not going to throw 0 interceptions the last 5 games. I'm not going to hold him to that standard. That's unfair for him. But continue to limit the potential damage, really start to get more consistency, especially with his downfield throws. Because again, I still think that's the biggest struggle with him in terms of consistently hitting the deep shots, which has lost them a couple games this season as well. You think of the Raiders game, which realistically, like, that could have and should have been an easier one for them. And like you said, that Steelers one, what cost them with the interceptions was deep shots. I think that there's plenty to clean up. I don't think he's the guy yet. I think that's a bit of an overreaction. But to say that, we were talking this season, will Jordan Love earn himself the right to be the Packers QB in 2024? I think he's earned that right. To be the guy? No, I think we're taking it a step too far. But does he get a second season to prove that he has a long-term future in Green Bay? Absolutely, he's going to get that second season. So, that being said, let's continue in the NFC North, boys. Justin, I'm going to throw this one over to you first. The Detroit Lions, much ballyhooed team, betting favorite, media darling going into the season, eating kneecaps and all that, started to struggle the last couple weeks here, right? And from the darling team they were at the start of the season to a team that lost on Thanksgiving Day, which I know you said it in the pre-show, Rick, like, yeah, Thanksgiving can be a little bit weird. When you're a really good team, it shouldn't have to be weird. The Packers continued their tradition, despite the fact that they are the inferior team record-wise this season. The Packers on Thanksgiving still seem to be big brother to the Detroit Lions because they smoked them. Once again, I know that pain. And you have that, and they nearly blew a game to the Saints last week, which, let's be real here, Pete Carmichael, Derek Carr, that's not an offense setting the world on fire. That it's more something that fans will set their jerseys of Derek Carr on fire than the Saints offense actually setting anyone on fire. But it happened. And it was very close, a play or two away from choking that game, and that would have been back-to-back terrible losses for the Lions. We have one more team to talk about in terms of back-to-back terrible losses. But Justin, in regards to the Lions, we crowned Detroit too quickly this season. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's not that it was too quickly, because I think that coming out of the gate, they were among the best teams in football. Now, their strength of schedule wasn't ideal. There was a controversial overtime game against the Seattle Seahawks, but they were among the top teams, and they were performing at a different level that they are now. I don't know if this is a Detroit thing. Maybe it's a young team succumbing to a little bit of pressure, assuming that they have more leeway than they do. But right now, they are rocking the boat in terms of, can we stay alive? Can we finish out strong, be a top contender in this league? And compete with the best teams in football. They're not going to beat the Niners. They're not going to beat the Eagles. They need to get the best seed possible because of that. And unfortunately for them, their play the last couple of weeks has kind of taken them out of that number one seed conversation. They do have a fairly easy schedule for the rest of the way. So I do expect them to have double-digit wins. They should win their division. But in terms of them being the number one seed, arguably the best team in the NFC and then in football, yeah, people were overreacting.
Rick, your thoughts? I mean, I'm with Justin. I think he's hit every point right there.
Well, I think we hit a point, not just us, but sports media in general. We hit a point this offseason where we wanted to anoint somebody in the NFC North, and we looked at how the Vikings season ended last year in that very, very bad way. Captain checked down. We just looked at the Bears and saw they weren't ready yet. And thought the Packers weren't, ready to go either. And the Lions were the team that had the most brought back from the year prior, that were the, fan pick, the fan favorite to be this rallying cry because Dan Campbell was this star in the making, and this was a team that was ready to pounce, pun intended. And look, they're 9-3. But their 9-3 has not been an impressive 9-3 when you consider the fact that not even so much the two games you mentioned, Jurg, but let's look at how they've been out of the bye. Out of the bye at 6-2 after a 12-point win against the Raiders, they beat the Chargers by 3 in a high-scoring offensive game, which, high-scoring offense, I understand, but if you're the Lions, weren't you past this with your defense? Wasn't Aaron Glenn supposed to be better this year than last year? Remember how bad they were defensively last year? They get, 400-plus points all season? And then the following it was either a comeback win against the Bears or, stop the comeback against the Bears.
Comeback. They were down 2 scores.
Right. So out of the bye, somehow this team has looked wholly different than what they were in the start of the season when they beat Kansas City to start the year, when they played Seattle really tough. Now, there was that Baltimore loss. I get it. But again, they bounced back from that to beat Vegas. So was it handily? 12 points. Not handily, but enough. I think this is a case where this team got too big for its britches right away. And now they're starting to realize that 16, 17 game seasons are slogs for the Lions. Justin's right. Their schedule's quasi-favorable, but look at it like this. After this week against the Bears, they have 2 games against the Vikings, who right now trend as the number 6 seed in the NFC playoff picture. A game against the Broncos, who are on that outside cusp looking in of the AFC, and the Cowboys. Now, to Justin's point, you want to prove that you're going to play with the big boys, beat the Cowboys in Week 17. Because I'm sure, like I said, if all things are equal and if everything happens like I said it could, that Dallas beats Philadelphia this week, Detroit and San Francisco hold on to their wins, you're all 10-3. So that Detroit-Dallas game becomes a little more meaningful than just a random Week 17 non-division game where both teams are good, but, what are we really playing for? So if you're the Lions, you got to find a way to course correct immediately, stomp out my Bears, and then move on, because if they have a lackluster showing here against Denver, you might see people say, well, they have Minnesota twice. There's nothing saying the Vikings can't come back and win this division again. And that would be a collapse that Dan Campbell wouldn't be able to come back from. So we did crown them too quickly, but now it's time for you to take that crown and earn it back. I think if they do that next couple weeks, this goes away. But
right,
we did crown them too quickly.
Yeah, I think so. And again, this is the curse that we fall into every single year. There's a team or two that gets overly hyped, a lot of faith put in them, and they'll show in stretches why they did deserve it, but then they're going to show us in stretches why, a bit too fast there. And I will say this in regards to Lions, I think the number one thing with this, we could say that, yes, Jared Goff hasn't been performing the last couple of weeks like he did earlier in the season, but I think this is a more telltale sign. Just looking at that division alone, Rick, The most points allowed by a defense in the NFC North is the Chicago Bears at 296. Second, the Lions. That's a very telling sign. You're the top team in this division right now, but you have the second worst defense in terms of points allowed. And again, like that's a defense that was our number one thing going into the season. All three of us wholeheartedly agree. The thing that could hold Detroit back from being as big of a threat as they could be is the defense. That we said the whole time. You got to play better as a whole than the sum of its parts. And that defense has been getting kind of torched up recently. And to your point about the Dallas game, Rick, it's not even more so the Dallas game for me. It's these next two games coming up. The really good teams that want to be or are in the elite conversation know how to handle business. If you're Detroit and you want to be back in the convo, before even Dallas crosses the mind, you got to handle business in these next two games. These are teams that on paper, people believe you can beat. You should beat. You got to beat them. There's no excuse. And like you said, it can't be a field goal comeback win against the Bears. Again, you got to beat down the Chicago Bears. They are inferior to you this season. They're not as good as you. Their head coach is going to be fired. You are the better team, and you need to prove that you're the better team.
We're already replacing Eberflus. Like, there have been 2 reports that have come out that Jim Harbaugh and Eric Bieniemy are going to be candidates. So he hasn't even been fired, but he's basically been fired by the media as it is.
Oh, yeah. Come on. All right. Last point we're going to talk about, and I did this on purpose because I'm hitting Rick with this one first. Rick, the Pittsburgh Steelers have lost 2 games in a row. They lost to the Arizona Cardinals. Once again, a pain that I know very much. Do we see a pattern here? But I think more so the loss to the Patriots is one of those, okay, we have an issue. So, Rick, and again, we kind of have to figure out the wording on this because there's so many different ways to phrase this question, but I think this was actually the best way. And this was said by Rick, and I think this is the way to go at it. Rick, Matt Canada was the scapegoat for what has been the failures of Mike Tomlin this season.
I mean, let's look at it like this. Matt Canada was an awful offensive coordinator. We all knew that. He could not manage an offense in the Civil War, the World War II, the Battle of the Bulge, Battle of Yorktown, the Battle of the Falkland Islands. He couldn't manage any of those battles on offense because he's just awful. If you look at the record before these 2 losses, the Steelers' 4 losses prior to the games against Arizona, not even the game against New England, the game against Arizona, their losses were San Francisco, when admittedly a really good team, but their offense was non-existent. Houston, which looking at it now, Houston's a lot better than we thought they were, but that was 30-6, not 30-7, 30-6. Jacksonville, which was a 20-10 game, which is kind of meh. And then the Cleveland game, 13-10. So in those 4 losses prior to Matt Canada being fired, the offense was awful. So you could point to that and say, yeah, well, it is Matt Canada that's been the problem here. But now with these 2 losses that they've had against Arizona and New England, I think what it does is it brings it a little bit closer because let's look at the historical significance of this season. The Steelers have not had a sub-500 year in 20 years if they win 9 games a season. It'll be the 20th straight season that they've had an over 500 record. Mike Tomlin has been the head coach in Pittsburgh for 17 seasons. The Steelers are all about consistency. But what do we know about consistency in the NFL? Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it really bites you in the ass. And a third time, consistency gets you a daughter. So there you go. That's what happens there too, potentially. Here's the deal. If I'm Mike Tomlin, I got to do whatever I can to rally my guys to win 2 of these next 4 games. Because if he finishes 9-8, based upon how this season's shaking out, I think they'll be okay to make a postseason berth. And I think that will save him of his job. And I'm very tiptoeing around this because I love Mike Tomlin. He's a friend of the show. And I know in Pittsburgh they want him gone because it just hasn't worked. But that's the thing. When you keep running the same thing back over and over and over again, If it's less good than it was the year prior, or if there's problems from the year prior that are still persisting, then yeah, you're going to want to see a change somewhere. These things take time. And look, a lot of what happened with Mike Tomlin's earlier years can be a credit to Dick LeBeau because that man was a defensive wizard. Terrell Austin's not that. He's a good defensive coordinator, but he's not Dick LeBeau in terms of the schemes. He's not Wink Martindale in terms of the schemes, in terms of all of that. So is it fair to say that Matt Canada was the scapegoat? Yes. But if you look at the overall totality of the issue here, they didn't draft a good quarterback. They drafted Kenny Pickett. And I think sophomore slump he's had consistently. They don't have a good enough backup because Trubisky's not the answer, and Mason Rudolph hasn't seen the field at all yet. They've got a couple of decent running backs. I do like Najee Harris, and I do like Jalen Warren. The wide receiver room, let's be real here. It seems like every second year something in the water poisons somebody in Pittsburgh, and those receivers get a little crazy. Look at George Pickens this year, and maybe Deontay Johnson as well. But this is also a team that lost Keanu Neal and Quan Alexander on IR. Those are two, maybe not big stat pieces, but heart and soul pieces for this team. And so there's a lot of different factors I think you could say. But I don't think it's an overreaction to say that Canada was the scapegoat, but he was the correct scapegoat. If the Steelers had made that move and fired Terrell Austin instead of firing Matt Canada, the shockwaves would be ridiculous. They fired the right coach. But at the end of the season, if things don't go well, and again, they're 7-6. So they've got 4 weeks to turn this around, but they're not easy games. If they can turn it around, Tomlin stays. If they can't, then they may trade him. And there's an article that I saw that said there are 3 teams that could be interested in a Mike Tomlin trade. And again, the precedence is Sean Payton. He was traded. The Bears. Think about Mike Tomlin coaching the Bears. The Chargers. Or, as the balloons fly over my head, the Patriots.
Oh, Lord.
Mike Tomlin and the Patriot way,
Patriots.
turning his back on the Steelers.
He's not doing that.
but what a villainous heel turn story that would be.
It would, but I think he hates them so much. I don't think he'd do that. Before I throw it over to you, Justin, I'll just give my 2 cents on this one. Look, Tomlin, I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. My perception of him has very much changed since we've begun this podcast. But for the last, we're mentioning incongruous many of the season. I'm saying this right now, and I think Steelers fans would agree. For the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of frustrations with this team, and Mike Tomlin is a key figure in a lot of those frustrations. For being the leader of men that he is, and he knows how to lead a locker room for sure and get them ready for a game. And I think he's shown on a number of occasions that he can get guys to overperform for a season. But there is just a massive issue for so many years now where this team plays down to their competition so badly. And for the longest time, they were able to escape those games where they played down to their competition because of the talent they had. But they don't have that talent anymore. They don't have that high-end talent. Look, is this man a scumbag? Absolutely. But Ben Roethlisberger was a pretty good quarterback. He was a very good quarterback, right? One of the best. Ben Roethlisberger, Mitch Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett combined are not. Even added Mason Rudolph, even though I don't think anyone wants to see Mason Rudolph take the field. Those 3 guys combined couldn't tie Ben Roethlisberger's laces on their best day versus him on his worst day. They just can't. The running game, it just doesn't feel like there's been a real threat in the Steelers' running game in a good little while. They find a way, like you said, there's just something happens every couple of years with the wide receivers where they just get upset. Now, I will say this. I think it's not even just Canada that has been the issue with it. I think the promise of that there would be legitimate scheme changes after Canada being fired was one thing. And I don't think those guys have seen that scheme change right away. And I think that's the frustrating part for that team. And whether you want to say it's these guys need to be patient, which I think is definitely fair, or whether you want to say it's the offensive coordinator that needs to, like the new OC there, that needs to fix things. At the end of the day, some of this discipline stuff and being better and being a professional and not playing down to your competition, that comes down from one guy. That's the head coach. And I think it's safe to say that for all the good we can say about Mike Tomlin, man, that dude, look, is it impressive that he has been able to keep this streak going, but mainly for himself, but for the Steelers as a whole, as long as he has? Yes. But at some point, not being below 500 just means you're mid. And I think the Steelers don't like mid, and they've been mid for a very long time. Even that season years ago when they started, was it 10 or 11 and 0, whatever it was, and they finish losing all but one game in the last month and a half of a season. I'm forgetting the exact season it was, but it was semi-recent. Like that season being an outlier, this has been a middle of the road team for so many years. And yes, they might get into the postseason, but they've never been a threat the last couple of postseasons to upset that higher seed that they were facing. And that's the thing that a younger Mike Tomlin, like in the earlier days of his career, I mean, granted, the earlier days of his career, they were higher seed, but a younger Mike Tomlin in terms of, I'm saying younger in terms of his coaching timeline, maybe more the middle of his tenure, maybe it was like in the 2010s, you could conceivably believe that a Mike Tomlin team could upset one of the higher seeds if they were a lower seed. That's not the case anymore. And I think you look at the guy's record that since that, not even the Super Bowl win, let's say the last Super Bowl appearance they've had, it's been a lot of playoff losses, man. And it's been a lot of one and dones. And I think Mike Tomlin, he's bought a lot of time for himself. I think the way, as we've said, the way that he can be consistent and lead this team and various other factors, I think has played a big role in him keeping his job. But it's a simple matter of fact. And you guys tell me this, like I said, ever since the Super Bowl appearance that they had, look, 0-2, they only have 3 playoff wins since that Super Bowl appearance. 3 playoff wins. And if I count the games here real quick, 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9, 3 and 6 in the last 9 playoff games. That's not good. That's really not good. And missing the postseason last year, it was fun for us, the whole, they might make it. They missed it last year. And they missed it. If we say, let's say hypothetically they missed it this season, they'll have missed it 4 of the last 6 seasons. You might be keeping the 500 thing alive. That postseason stretch ain't great. So, like you said, Rick, I think Matt Canada was the right scapegoat, like you said. I don't think they were ever going to fire their DC, but I think he was the right guy to go. But the problems did not go away in any way, shape, or form. There's still a lot of problems with Pittsburgh. And unless they change something drastic, we're going to be talking about the same thing next season. And we're going to say that the Steelers have a chance. And we're going to talk about it. And Rick is going to fall in love with Mike Tomlin and them all over again next year. And they're going to lose back-to-back games again next season. And we're going to question, what the heck are the Pittsburgh Steelers doing? It's going to happen next year again. It has happened for the most part the last couple seasons. It's going to happen one more time. Justin?
I mean, yeah, look, it's almost the Marvin Lewis debate. I mean, I know Tomlin has won a Super Bowl. He's been to multiple Super Bowls. How long is just being a playoff team going to be good enough? Or just having a winning record going to be good enough? Tomlin's a Hall of Fame coach. Don't get me wrong. He is that good. He deserves to be there. But, I mean, it almost... and forgive me for making this comparison, but it almost reminds me of the Rex Ryan issue. Rex was a great defensive coordinator. He was a really good coach. He couldn't get offense going. He didn't know offense. He couldn't call an offense. And no matter what they did, they could not get their offense going. So it's almost like the Jets this year. That's a different thing. But so is it an issue to the point where Tomlin is just so offensively inefficient that they need to get someone in there that might know a complete game? Is it a coordinator issue? I know they fired Canada. It's not like things have changed all that much. They're not scoring leaps and bounds more than they were before. Or is it a personnel issue? It could just be that, Kenny Pickett's not the guy. That was a weak quarterback class. People weren't thinking, hey, Kenny Pickett's going to come in and be the next Peyton Manning. They were saying he's the best quarterback in the draft, but is he more than a middle-of-the-road quarterback? There's a lot of questions there in Pittsburgh. I don't necessarily know what the answer is. I don't think firing Tomlin or trading Tomlin or getting rid of Tomlin is the answer. But there might be some changes there soon.
And this is my thing when it comes to this conference. I'm not even saying to fire, trade him, or whatever. But I'm saying he needs to be a part of the change. And I think the problem with Tomlin is that he just shrugs it off. And he says that the standard is the standard and they're doing it the Steelers way. And that, what was this quote? I always sort of misword it when I bring it up. But what was his quote about the fans? Like they want their fans, fat, sassy, and content, satisfied, whatever the hell it was. Dude, that's unacceptable.
Fat, sassy, and spoiled.
Yeah, I don't think being spoiled, like, correct me if I'm wrong, you two being, I don't cheer for a specific NFL team, but I'm just a general NFL fan.
I thought you were going to call me fat for a second. I was like, whoa, hold on.
No, Rick.
I'm sassy, yes, but fat and spoiled?
I'm not saying with you two. Anyways, you aside, thanks, Rick, for derailing that.
Thank you.
There's the chaos, ladies and gentlemen. But no, like, in terms of, like, is being spoiled your team being able to pull off 2 drives in a row that seem competent? Because how many times this season, aside from that Bengals game, which ironically came after firing Matt Canada, aside from that game, how many other times this season did they have 2 or 3 drives in a row where I'm not even saying score a touchdown, I'm saying the threat of a touchdown? That's not being spoiled. That's what an NFL offense should be able to do.
Well, so that's kind of where it all comes full circle then from our first overreaction about the Eagles. Because what did I say about the Eagles? They weren't winning in the style that they were winning last year. They're winning games, but they're not winning convincingly. What does Mike Tomlin always say? He doesn't want moral victories, just wants victories. Wins are the only thing that matters in the Pittsburgh Steelers realm. Your offense could be terrible. You could win the game 6-3, but did you win the game? So that's kind of where I think his mindset is, and where Omar Khan, the GM's mindset is, hey, we're winning games.
But I think
we'll fix it, but we're winning games.
But at some point, the whole "we're winning games" thing is going to run out. And look, for all we're saying that, hey, the Steelers might make the playoffs again, or they might hold it, let's not rule out the possibility they might lose out. They might. Let's be real here. They might lose their last 4 games. Now, I think we looked at this. I don't even think on show, but I think we were doing this like just privately in our chat. Like the Steelers don't necessarily have. I don't think it's the toughest of competition over the next 4 weeks. I think there's. Again, I could be wrong. Rick will say it right now.
Colts, Bengals, Seahawks, Ravens.
Okay, that's actually kind of tough. Like, there's a chance here, relatively speaking, even if they don't lose out, they might only win 1 game. And what happens if they go 1-3? That's 8-9. And that whole 500 not being below it thing is gone. And again, I'm not saying you fire Tomlin. That is not my argument here. What I'm saying is that for there to be a change in this organization, there needs to be the people who are in power need to switch how they're doing things and evolve. And if Tomlin is not going to evolve as a coach, and I'm not even saying change his philosophy and style, you can't tell me he doesn't have some sort of role with the issues of the behavior of his wide receivers. It's happened with too many players now to where we can only say it's the players themselves. He has something in there. And if he can't evolve, I'm sorry, the game is going to pass him by real quick here. We've seen the game pass the other big defensive stalwart right now in Bill Belichick. Look, I already just said, could the Steelers be like 10-7 next year? That's a real possibility. Could they be 8-1 next year? That's a real possibility. You know what they could also be next season? They could go 6-11 next year. Just because we've grown up with this whole the Steelers are never below 500 doesn't mean it can't happen. And I'm saying, if nothing philosophically, the way they carry themselves, if that doesn't change, the Steelers are going downhill next season by far. And there's that. So I don't think this is an overreaction at all. I think this is spot on the money. I think that, yes, they had their scapegoat where they can look temporarily good, but I think in the long term, there's going to be some problems here. And they need to change the way that they're operating things. So there's that, to say the very least. So that was the batch of overreactions, a nice half dozen there for us to be able to speak on. There are other topics that we could have broached that I think we'll be broaching next week, not more in terms of overreactions, but just topics that we can speak about. The Chiefs, are they in a good spot or not? We'll have to wait after this Bills game to see the fate of both of those teams. The Jacksonville Jaguars now with the Lawrence injury, could they be in a tricky situation? Could the Texans surprise them? Could even the Colts be the team to surprise everybody, us three included, and snatch this division away? A lot of stuff needs to happen. We're going to be seeing that over the next couple of weeks, and we're definitely going to be talking about it because, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for one of the first of the co-main events per weekly on the show, the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge, where Rick, Justin, and I go throughout the slate of NFL games in a given week, where we pick games from a 4 to 1 point scale on most confident to least confident that we all go for. We all make 4 picks. We all must have at least one upset pick in our 4 game selections. The lowest it can be is our 2-point pick, so it cannot be our 1-point pick. What the penalty for that is, we don't know. We're just so good at what we do that none of us will ever forget about that. And we also remind each other because, all's fair in pick challenges and stuff. And of course, we can also pick ties on the show. We have had, I think, only one tie selected so far this season. And if you do I'm not throwing a shot at you. I'm just saying the fact. Calm down. If you do end up going with a tie, if any of us go with a tie in a given week, we have to use it automatically with our 4-point pick, but it becomes a 5-point pick if you get it. So there's that. And if we go perfect in a given week, we get a +1 at the end, which has been a while since any of us got a +1 this season. I kind of miss it. I don't even care if it's me at this point. I just want one of us to get a perfect week here soon. So there's that. And of course, I think last point I need to pick here in terms of the idea of, how are you guys deciding your upsets? Well, we are all using the same app, which is, we're looking at the games on the ESPN app, which we get the lines for those games brought to us by our friends at
ESPN Bet.
Thank you, Justin. So with that being said, I think I've listed everything. Rick, I throw it to you. Give the people the point update, and let's get this going.
So it was week 11 that we had our last perfect week. It was Justin, actually, who had that, which is why Justin's currently in the lead at 91 points. I'm at 85 points in second place. Despite picking a 5-point tie, I held firm because Kansas City decided to do Justin dirty, as did Cleveland. So, kept me in the game for somewhat. Unfortunately, though, Jurg, it was a rough week for you, man, last week. I take no glory in saying this. I just like reporting the facts.
That's a lie. I want the people to know that's a bold-faced lie right there.
You picked Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, and Philadelphia to win. They did not. So you only had on your 1-point game, which was Atlanta, which means that you're at 68 points.
I can't believe Arthur
so
Smith.
Close,
I can't believe Arthur Smith got me.
I know. How about that? And based upon the win for our mascot, who again is taking the week off to go sailing around the archipelago of Patagonia or whatever, he's at 42 points. So, Patagonia. Yeah, it's Argentina. So there you go. So yes, so Justin's got a 6-point lead on me. So the top two are myself and Justin. Justin 91, me 85. Then it's Jurg at 68, and Billy Shakes at 42. So Jurg, I know you said you didn't want the perfect week, but you should take the perfect
I'll take
week.
it, though. I'll gladly take it.
So we've got a bunch of games to pick. Again, double main event for Monday Night Football. One good game, one. Well, no, they're both bad games. But
I was going to say,
one game has a good team. The others are, rough. So
that's fair.
Again, Jurg will pick first, and we'll snake this around and see what happens. So
I can't wait for me to make this selection on one of the big lines, which one of them has actually changed during the course of the show. Let me just say for the people real quick. The San Francisco 49ers, when the show started, were favored by 13. Now they're favored by 13.5.
There you go.
Just for the record. And also real quick, let me just clarify one thing for the people, because I know we said we're going by the lines. We're not necessarily going for covering, guys. We're just going for the win. The lines just help us decide what is the technical upset and who is favored, just for the people to understand that.
I've learned this year on another pool that I use with another betting system that even if you pick the winning team, when you cover, you lose. And so that really irritates me because I should be higher up in the standings than I currently am. But I'll rant later. So, Jurg, that'll be on.
Okay, there we go. All right, there's two games here that I can pick between, and because both actually showed up on my schedule this week, thank you, ESPN app, I'll be able to pick properly. Now, that being said, is this going to be a case where I'm picking this team a week too late and they're going to lose for me? Absolutely. With how my luck has been this season, this is what's going to occur. But if I'm going to hope to God that everything ends up going my way this time around, give me the Miami Dolphins for my 4-point pick.
Okay, very, very solid selection there. Miami over Tennessee, the second of the Monday Night Football games, a 13-point favorite in that one. Well, my dilemma is such that I do not like changing picks that I've made preseason. And so if you know the lines, you'll know why I'm staying away from a certain game. Not because I think that Seattle will win, but that's because that's what I picked, and I don't want to do that for my my choices here. So I will instead go with the Baltimore Ravens at 4 over the LA Rams. I know the Rams have been playing really well as of late, but I think the Ravens can continue their good stretch. They're a very good defense, and I firmly believe that will see them to victory. So I will take Baltimore for my 4-point selection this week.
Interesting. That leaves me with a few games that I don't want to touch. I guess I'm going to have to go with the San Francisco 49ers. I think that's obviously the best game left. And then I'm going to have to pick an upset pick here. I haven't really liked my choices when it gets back to me at 2. So I'm gonna take it here. I'm gonna go the Broncos over the Chargers at 3 points.
Okay. I like that. I think that's solid because I know that they're not favored, but they're playing really well. So I think that's a good one. I'm actually gonna follow suit. Should I do that? You know what? Let me just see the other games that I have here. No, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick logically, and I'm going to try and get some points back here. And I'm going to take the Lions over the Bears in my 3-point pick. Again, we're only picking wins. We're not picking covers, but it's a 3-point line, and the Bears are in shambles. So the Lions, you need to win by at least 10 or 15 to really make a statement here. And I think they'll do it. I think the Lions will avenge the demons of 3 weeks ago when they barely pulled off a comeback win against Chicago. I think they'll roll in the Soldier Field this time and do it again. So I will take Detroit for 3.
The Texans have a massive opportunity here, boys, to make a impact and really take this division from right under the noses of, of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think more than enough there is a fair shot that they should be able to do so. So I'm going to go with the Texans for my 3-point pick. Mm-hmm. And for my upset pick, unlike what it felt like the middle of the season, there was a lot of upset picks, at least on paper, that we liked. It feels like we're starting to get to a point where we don't like too many of these upsets, and which is why I don't blame Justin for going with his upset pick at 3, because when you have to wait, it takes you a little bit. So I don't blame him at all. In terms of games left on the board, there aren't too many on paper that it's like thrilling for me to go with. There is one that's very interesting, which is funny because I just talked about Houston. Now, if I talk about this team, it's kind of like, oh, they're kind of sort of going against each other, but at the same time, they still could be pretty interesting if things happen here. So you know what? Why not go for complete chaos in the AFC South? Give me, because the Bengals are shown as favorites going into this game, give me the Colts for my 2-point upset.
That's a good one too. That's one that I considered as well. So my dilemma comes down to I have 3 upsets on the board remaining for myself here. And I ragged on Buffalo, and I ragged on Philadelphia, and I ragged on Green Bay. So I guess by that logic, I'll go Monday night. Give me this story. Give me this great story that we're seeing of the local boy doing it for his home side, and because I love making them and I love eating them. Give me chicken cutlets. Give me Tommy Cutlets and Tommy DeVito. I will take the Giants over the Packers at my 2-point upset pick.
All right. That's me now. So what was your 3-point pick?
Whose?
Who do I have left is a better question.
Okay. Let me tell you. You have Atlanta, Tampa. You have Cleveland, Jacksonville. New Orleans, Carolina, Minnesota, Vegas, Buffalo, Kansas City, or Philadelphia, Dallas. But you've already taken your upset, so you're good. You're clean.
So I was speaking with someone during the week who was telling me how the Cowboys have not lost at home to Philly in a very long time. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to pick Philly to lose 2 games in a row. It doesn't sound like them right now, which is why I'm torn. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the Buffalo Bills at 2.
Ooh.
It's a big one right there.
And then I'm going to pick against my team that I've been picking for the last 2 years. And I'm going to pick the Cowboys at home.
Okay, well, you know what they say. You don't win by going cheap. So
yeah.
Interesting.
Those two games are going to be, I think, the biggest deciders of Justin getting another perfect week here.
You know what's funny too? From looking at everything, Justin has the 1 p.m. slot off once again.
Classic.
He's got
Justin's all about prime time.
Oh yeah, Justin's got 3 of the 4 o'clock games and the Sunday night game as well. Okay. So looking at what I have left and what you have left as well, I'm trying to think about, is there a game here that I can take that would really hurt you? But then again, it's 1 point. What do I always say?
Rick, I've been hurt my entire life. There's nothing you
Oh
can
no,
do.
I was talking about Justin because if I win a 1 point game,
right.
it's a little needle in it. But what's the game that I can take that would be, because I don't trust the Vikings coming off of a bye here. And I feel like you cannot pick Cleveland against Jacksonville for the simple reason that you don't know if Trevor Lawrence is starting. And even if it is, you don't know who's starting for Cleveland either.
So I actually just saw this. My apologies. I saw this update earlier in the show during the overreaction. Let me pull up the post so I can give you the exact news here. If my apps would load. This is what Xfinity Wi-Fi gets for you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go here.
Womp womp.
All right, got it. Perfect. So the Browns have elevated Joe Flacco from the practice squad to the active roster for the game versus the Jaguars, and they have also waived PJ Walker.
Yeah, but that still doesn't, DTR is still in concussion protocol. So, I mean, that, we're not sure there. But again, if you're talking about it being Joe Flacco versus a gimpy Trevor Lawrence, that's different from a Joe Flacco versus a CJ Beathard. And because of that uncertainty, the Jaguars are not announcing until tomorrow. I'm staying away from that game. I am going to trust and pick the team that I picked at the beginning of the season to win this division. Give me the Falcons over Tampa Bay at my 1-pointer. You know what? If Arthur Smith can mess with Justin's Jets, let's throw more chaos onto the fire.
Anyone could mess with my Jets.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I don't blame you there at all, Rick, because I think that just the Falcons by hook or by crook, they've been finding ways here, and Tampa's really been disappointing. Like after their hot start, they lost 6 of their last 7, I think, or 7 of their last 8?
Something like that. Yeah.
Or so it hasn't been great necessarily. Tough times in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Agreed. All right. I know I have 3 games remaining. So I know Jags Browns is an option. Vikings Raiders is still on the board.
That is.
And then what's the third one?
Saints Panthers.
Okay. Well,
none of these games are worth touching. I personally believe, but that's just my opinion on the matter.
The Saints Panthers game hurts my heart because I really thought Carolina would be better than this. I really did.
Yeah.
But now, what are the odds that somehow, some way, the Panthers find their second win against the Saints of all teams?
Well, that could be. You could pick that game too.
I could be wrong. Did Derek Carr in the game against the Lions? Am I misremembering, or was it a different game? Is Derek Carr going to be good because he didn't play the whole game? Did they just sit him out at the end because you get what I'm asking? Like, is Derek Carr healthy?
I believe he re-aggravated the injury, but from all intents and purposes, from what I've seen, I think he's going to start this week. Okay. But I think they're going to be very cautious on it because I did see Winston go back in. But
the big question is, should that make me more or less confident?
Well, again, I mean, there's also the Vikings coming off of the bye.
And I also think I saw earlier this week, Max Crosby is either questionable or even doubtful going into this one. So if he's not 100%, then it's not looking great for the Raiders, to say the very least.
Yep.
And I know Aiden O'Connell's been pretty good. And Minnesota, I will say this, like the pass or not stuff has kind of like worn off a little bit with the disappointing loss to the Broncos and the loss to the Bears. Those were two rough games, to say the very least.
Yeah.
But that being said, I said this, I'm not picking the Browns Jags. Let me X that out right away. I'm sorry, Carolina. I'm sorry. I got to go with the Saints. I'm not proud of it, but
that's okay.
I think that's the first time I've picked Derek Carr this season, so I'm pretty confident.
That's all right. You do what you can under the circumstances. So, all right. Well, that means there are 2 games for our fourth, our mascot, and the picks are Vegas over Minnesota and Cleveland over Jacksonville. So there you go from there. So that means that Here are our picks for week 14. Oh, wow, 14 weeks of the NFL season. Aside from the two that I just mentioned, Jurg is going Miami over Tennessee at 4, Houston over the Jets at 3, your 2-point upset of Indianapolis over Cincinnati, and New Orleans over Carolina at 1. I am taking Baltimore over the Rams at 4, Detroit over Chicago at 3, the Giants over the Packers in a 2-point upset, and Atlanta over Tampa at 1 point. Justin's got San Francisco over Seattle at 4, upset at 3 of Denver over the Chargers. Interesting. Upset at 2 of Buffalo over the Chiefs, and Dallas over Philadelphia at 1 point. So there you go. That's week 14 in the books, gentlemen.
That boy. So, guys, once again, that was this week's edition of the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge. To say the very least, the race between Justin and Rick is very much getting closer and closer, leading to a potentially climactic showdown. We hope in week 18. We're going to hope our week 18 picks is more dramatic than what the potential NFL slate could be in week 18 by that point. Because as we detailed earlier, some things might actually be just settled come that time. So, that being said, it's time for the second part of our main event. Ladies and gentlemen, you know it. You love it. I'm pretty sure people love it. It's they do. It's one of our highest rated segments of all time. The people come in droves when it comes to Rant and Rick's Roast Podium. Rick, take us home.
I do want to let you gentlemen know as well that I spent the last couple of days going through the archives and compiling and collabing all of the rants I've done from episode 40 up until now, because episode 39 was our Christmas episode last year. So I have the arsenal ready to go for Rantsmas Express, and I'll be cobbling that together this week. So by the time next week rolls around, we'll be ready to go for that. So these may possibly be in there, which, if they are, that's fine. But if not, at least you know that they're somewhere there. Number 3 on my rant list this week. I have sat on this one for quite a long time because, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, there are things in this world that are marketing gimmicks. Like, you buy a can of dehydrated water, which is just air, and you just add water, and it's that. And it's stupid. It's stupid. So this comes from a spot where it feels like it's stupid, and it's also like environmentalist, so it's doubly stupid in a way. Did you know that Tasmania bottles their air and ships it worldwide because, according to global climate scientists, Tasmania has the world's cleanest air? Because small island, southern part of the earth, very far away from like the lights and everything, all that. Let me ask you a question. What are you going to do with that Tasmanian air? Like, basically, you just have a bottle, in essence. Like, there's nothing you have there except, air in a bottle. It just happens to be clean air from Tasmania. And I understand that they're trying to, get away from what we know them for, which is the Tasmanian devil, obviously. Like that. Like, there's no reason to try and market yourself crazily by adding something else. So, very gimmicky, very stupid. I will pass. No, thank you. Number 2 on my list and my podium this week is a more recent addition, but it's one that I'm, pretty upset about. Well, I mean, it's not recent that it's more recent, like happening, but social media. You suck. So, I don't know if you saw this. There was a tweet that went out from the accounts of pretty much every baseball stadium that was like a cryptic announcement happening tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, or whatever. Well, I thought it was really cool. I mean, granted, what's the payoff going to be? I don't know, but the payoff's going to be something. And social media decided to lambast this cryptic marketing thing, which, looked really cool, and also do the thing that I hate the most, which is that people spoiled the announcement prior to it being announced. Now, what was the announcement, you ask? It was the Def Leppard and Journey Stadium Tour with the Steve Miller Band, which I think, as a classic rock aficionado, sounds like a great concert. And it sounds like a really fun time. I'm sure Justin's getting tickets right now for it, actually. But there's no reason to just hate on something on social media for marketing or even so spoil what it truly is. Because now we live in an age where we get things immediately at our fingertips. And I kind of miss the wherewithal of not knowing what the thing is until it's actually announced. You know, like I miss the idea of it's almost like when you announce the Olympics or the World Cup or what it used to be. Like you had these votes and you weren't sure who was going to win, which is why when 2012 happened and New York City didn't win, I was disappointed until London won, but I didn't know it was going to happen until it happened. Stop spoiling things. Stop jumping the shark and jumping ahead because you want to be that guy who has that source. Like, there's no reason for it. And you know what? If this concert's really good, why don't you go to it if it's spoiling on social media? You won't because you hate classic rock. You're listening to trap or drill, which again, may I remind you, are not music. They are something to catch vermin and a power tool. Ice Spice, just letting you know, you don't create music, you create headaches for the rest of us people. Number 1 on my list this week is something that Jer, you actually brought up during this show. Trademarks and copyright. Because it's not so much what's being copywritten and what's being trademarked, it's that we have to go to this length to trademark these things. So if I'm somebody who has an idea, I understand that like intellectual property, like images and whatnot, I won't touch that. But if I have a name that rhymes with a word and I want to use that word in like my article of clothing or my article of like, you know, whatever, and I can't because some random jackknob from the middle of nowhere bought the trademark to this thing for $15,000 or whatever it is, that's called ruining my small business entrepreneurship. And the reason why I say this is because who in their right mind would ever want to own the trademark to the word yeet? It's not even a word. It's what happens when an Arctic llama sneezes. Yeet. It's not even a part, like it's not even in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. And if it is, then shame on them. But like this is getting out of hand. I understand. Like what are we going to do now? I'm going to go down to the patent office and just trademark asterisk grunt asterisk. So that anytime someone says, I'll be like, trademark, that's mine. Like, why are we getting stupid with this? Like, you can't own a bodily sound or a made-up connotation of a word. That's just not right. It's not logical. It's almost like you're planning to like just waste your life and bequeath that to your 14th second son who, you know, is that idiot lacrosse guy who's going to Dartmouth for no reason other than to play lacrosse named Bernie or something like that. And it's like, oh, well, you're going to Dartmouth, but I'm bequeathing you my patent of the word yeet so that you now have $15 million in your trust fund. Like, shoot me with the trust fund nonsense. Honestly, just enough. Like, stop buying trademarks. Let people have their way to say whatever they need to say. I don't get trademarked by calling Duncan a terrible organization and saying that they suck. Although I could say Duncan sucks and put that on a t-shirt, because that'd be really cool to then do that. On the flip side, do our logo so people would know, oh, you want to hear about how Duncan sucks? Go to this podcast. If I could, you know, get out of the trademark of, you know, the image that Justin's friend created or that you created or your friend created there for, me to use that on.
That was 100% Justin's creation.
Yeah, so I lost the trademark there to Justin then anyways. But yeah, stop it, trademarks. And Adam Rank, stop it. Like, join me in hoping that the Bears get squashed this week because we know it's going to happen. So just accept your fate. Accept your fate. James Harden, you're still overrated. Goodbye.
And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, another hot rant and Rick's Roast Podium finished. If you want more of that, you got to come back to the show. And how do you come back to the show? Next week, of course. That concludes this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Beautiful people. A lot of overreactions were had. A lot was spoken about. Some, yes, they are overreactions. Others, well, maybe closer to the truth than we really believe. We're only going to be able to prove all that and more as the season reaches its finale very soon here. And beyond that, of course, we're going to be covering it every step of the way. We have so much more to talk about, potential records being broken here in a couple weeks, like Rick mentioned, and also some Hall of Famers coming up. we're going to have some discussion on that as well. All that and more here on the podcast that talks fun, football, and chaos. Thank you all so much once again. And we'll see you all next week.